Town council budget meetings. Item number 2 is consideration of the town manager's proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 budget, and start with A, finance. And for counselor, that's page 296 of our budget book.
Beat me to it. All right. Good evening again. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity here to cover our budget. I obviously have staff here in anticipation of granular questions. So let's start off with finance and records. Let's get right at it. My total budget is $394,193, an increase of $23,475. The overall budget was the payroll was increased by $20,186 for the negotiated raises and 2024 raises for union staff. The program budget increased by $3,289. This is mainly due to the increase of $2,700 in financial software maintenance agreements. So I'm available for any questions in relation to finance and records accounting services. And Lisa Hancock is also on virtually should there be any questions.
Are there any questions? Council, we get you about the councilman.
Couple of small questions on this one. The 6.4% increase on payroll. There were no new ads in that, were there?
There are no new ads of payroll anywhere in the entire budget.
No, I mean like from prior year that we're annualizing.
No.
Thank you.
Brian, can I address that? This is Lisa.
I would love you to.
Lisa.
Hi, everybody. I just sent you an email with all the questions that Katie had asked for this evening. And you're going to see, I just want to make this blanket statement because you're going to see this across the board going through these budgets when you're looking at payroll. In the fiscal year 22-23 budget, the original adopted budget, it did not include the union negotiated wages in that budget. It also does not include the non-affiliated wages either. The union budget was approved in 22-23, but after the budget was adopted. What we do is we set those funds aside in the contingency account. You will see in contingency that went down, I think it was around $60,000 or so. That's basically a reallocation of the 22-23 wages that were set aside in there to go into the different departments. So you're going to see one piece of the increase showing in this department is the impact of the 22-23 just being reclassified from one account to the other. And then you're going to see the union approved 23-24 budget in this line item as well. Now, for the non-affiliated staff, such as myself, my assistant, and in these other departments as well, the 22-23 salary is, when it was adopted, was only the salary for any of us as of 21-22. I know it sounds confusing, but this is how it's been done for years. The raises for 22-23 are in payroll contingency. So when we do the budget for 23-24, the raises for 22-23 are now in the budget, but the raises for 23-24 are in contingency for next year once the manager goes through his process. So you're going to see this pretty much across the board. It's going to look like pretty substantial increases across budgets, but it's certainly not, it's not that people got a 6% increase. It's just because now you have 2 years shown in the budget where half of it was in a different budget at the beginning of the year. Does that make sense to all of you? Or did I confuse you?
Well, it's pretty clear. We're good.
Okay.
Okay, the professional services you said again, Brian, was what specifically?
Munis,
Eunice.
Munis. Is that a Munis upgrade?
nope. That is our annual software support cost. And we are in the process of going to the next level, which will be a substantial upgrade. But we're not there yet. We're making headway to get there.
So why did it increase if it's regular Munis, did our yearly amount change?
Right, every year, on average, we have about a 5% increase. This year, they wanted 8%, and I negotiated with them and got them down a little bit, but they really couldn't go much lower than the 6.8% increase that they hit us with.
Okay, and then this is kind of high level, but the office supplies really only seems to be increasing in this area. And then the printings, so it wasn't like universal, so what's driving the increase in office supplies?
Sure, every so often, we don't buy checks all the time every year. So you'll see some years the amount is up, some years the amount is down. But the year coming up now, our supply is getting low and we need to purchase more checks, more paper products in that area. But there's nothing really beyond what we normally purchase, hole punch paper, things like that. We've certainly made every effort to reduce the amount of printing. And I know Councilor Murray's question across the board was, can we reduce printing? And, I in my response, I offered some ideas, but, we'd have to see. But we've worked towards reducing payroll to get union negotiations in place to have direct deposit advices and have it sent electronically. We still have a few who want a printed advice, and but it's not as much as running a check. But also, we're not cutting checks any longer for employees, except for maybe one or two that are kids that are in, recreation or something like that, and maybe a couple of state checks that we can't send, or different checks we have to send. Can't go electronically, but everything else is pretty much all ACH direct deposit, and we've cut out a lot of purchasing over many years for those printing costs. And that's all in this in these accounts here between office supplies and printing.
Okay, so we're just doing this one right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for me.
All right, Councilor Murray?
Thank you. I did see that an email came through, but
Yeah, I got it so late in the day. I right up until the meeting, I was trying to answer everything. So I'm sorry that you all just got it, but
No
I've been
worries.
working nonstop.
yeah,
We appreciate it. We'll get it passed over to Lisa for the minutes as well.
Was there anything in there about efforts we can do as a town to be more digital rather than paper oriented?
Yes.
That you want to call out now?
Sure. We, like I said, we have tried to do as much minimal printing, across my various finance departments, such as electronically sending tax bills for those who elect to do that. You still have people who still want that paper copy, but some of the big things that we print are, for example, these budget books. I can send them all electronically. We do by law have to print a few hard copies that have to be on file in the manager's office and library, things like that. But years ago, we were sending them out for the manager's level to be printed by a printer, and they were like 3 times the cost of printing them in-house. But if you all wanted to start with maybe getting the budget books electronically, that's certainly a council decision. It would save on staff time, it would save on paper, ink, copying charges, machinery wear and tear. There's a lot there that could be done, but that's got to be an overall council decision, or maybe elective for those who would prefer it that way, and those who want it printed, get it printed. That's one option. We've looked at many different ways of, for example, doing electronic payment of checks. Right now, we're very cautious with that, I've noted in my response, the town of Farmington was hit pretty bad several years ago for hundreds of thousands of dollars in ACH fraud because they did a lot of their payment processing through ACH rather than issuing checks. And we have a lot of safeties in place. And maybe with the new software that we're changing to, there may be a better opportunity for a more secure environment to initiate something like that, so that we'd be printing less accounts payable checks going forward. We'll still have 1099s, W-2s, 1095s, things like that. You'll never get away from unless the federal government changes laws in that area.
Is the software that you're referring to under the accounting department? Or is that,
Yes, for our Munis financial software, that's
Okay.
under there.
okay, so, I know you mentioned, when, just a couple minutes ago, that you're gonna upgrade Munis. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I don't have a lot of information as of yet, but the software itself, every so many years, it has a lifeline to the software. And then Munis gets to a point where they, I can't think of the word that it's called, but it gets out of service and you have to use their upgraded version of their software. That we have delayed as long as we possibly could because of the costs, with servers, everything else that you have to be in focus with, to get the most lifeline out of the software possible. The upgrade will be the same software, so it's not like you're going out and spending $500,000 for the new software. However, it's going to be a new version of it that will run a little bit differently than how we have it now, but it will be the same software. It's just a newer version. It could be in a new language of how they program it. The goal is we're getting the test database up onto our servers now. We're trying to work with Tyler Technologies to make that happen. Once we get the test database in, we'll start looking at it. We're hoping to do combined training to save money there with the town of South Windsor, because they are also transitioning at the same time. So we're hoping that we could save some of that money for the training that goes along with it by doing a joint effort.
Okay, great.
Hello, this looks nice. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the upgraded Munis going to be built into next year's budget?
It is not in next year's budget. We're waiting to see. It maybe will go into the 24-25 budget if necessary. We're trying to see what the impact will be as far as cost-wise. We don't have that information yet. I'm hoping that our particular servers will work and we won't have to upgrade any of them. But we're still waiting for all of that to come through. We're hoping that when they upgrade this database, for the test database, we'll see how it works on our servers.
Okay. And then we're still on accounting. This is a 6.33% increase from prior year. Is this budget sufficient for the department to meet its goals and objectives for fiscal year 24?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions to council members for the independent audit? All right.
All right. Independent audit. The town share of independent audit increased by $4,050 to $31,500. The town and Board of Education have a contract negotiated with Clifton, Larson and Allen for them to split 50-50 between the town and the Board of Ed. Town's portion of the total cost for these services is represented in the increase of $4,050. That contract, I believe, is up for the contract is up this year and we're going to put it out to bid. Talking to Lisa about this, she expects the prices to go even higher. Lisa, would you say it's accurate?
That is correct.
Happy for questions. Should you have any?
So then just to clarify, the total cost is 63,000. Roughly, like total between the board and the council.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I think that's.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Any other questions, Councilman Murray?
If this is a, decent increase, if we're under contract, I'm just curious why our contract is allowing for this pretty substantial increase in cost.
You want me to answer that, Brian?
I prefer that, yes, please.
Okay. Because we did not have a formal written contract. It was not through a bid process. It was through a request for proposal, which was more of a proposal process, but no written signed contract from when I think it was Steve Warbner was in place back then. Never have we ever had any situation where there had been an increase through an RFP. But at the time now, the firm, there's just no way they can manage the audit for what we were paying them. So I did check if there was, they wanted a lot more than this to begin with. I worked with them to try to get the price down as much as I could. That's number one. Number two, there was no written legally binding contract that said they had to abide by that. I tried to push the RFP, but there was no legal signed contract by the town manager back then. And the situation is now that they're having difficulty hiring employees. They've had to offer 20% pay increases just to keep the employees that they have. And the cost to doing the audits, because there's more mandates from the auditing practices that they must follow, whether it's state regulated, federal regulated, it's taking even more manpower to make it happen. At the point with our audit, they were actually losing money, and it happened not only to Tolland, but to pretty much all of the clients within the state of Connecticut that CLA had. The only other option we had was to go out to bid. I called around and there was some not even willing to entertain anything right now because they just didn't have enough staff to take on new audits. The pricing in the initial bids, which I don't have those numbers with me, were significantly higher than these. And what my colleagues are telling me that are going out for formal bids going forward, they're saying that the prices are going up, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 compared to where they had been in prior years. We won't know what's going to happen for the 23-24 audit until I go out to bid next year for that.
Are you satisfied with the services provided by this vendor?
I am very satisfied. Our manager is top notch on the project, and our partner is very well versed in municipal accounting. There's very few firms left out there that have the specialty practice for municipal auditing and reporting. There's so many requirements and so few auditors that do it.
And do you feel that this proposed budget is sufficient for the department to meet its goals and objectives for fiscal year 24?
Yes, But as a caveat, just to know, going forward, there's a very strong possibility that this is going to substantially increase in the next budget process.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Moving on, miscellaneous support services, translated all our office equipment. The operating budget increased by $8,840 for a total of $65,115. Fuel and oil increased by $5,700 because the price per gallon of fuel has increased also. Other services and fees increased by $2,700 because we have some service just for some Xerox printers as they were over 10 years old and starting to require more service. And we have, yeah, that's the biggest. Those are the biggest increases around copiers. And then the fuel and oil, again, that's the oil and also the pool vehicles as well. But I'm happy to take any questions.
In terms of the servicing, is that just full replacement or is it specialized servicing just of the parts mentioned in the summary?
I think there's a replacement coming and service. Lisa, is that accurate?
That is accurate. It's a lease replacement. It's not a outright purchase, because an outright purchase for a new copier would be $10,000-15,000. There was, I know, a combination of a new lease, plus there will be services that will need now to be performed on the Xerox printers that will no longer be under a lease process.
Any other question?
So, if we're buying parts for printers that are no longer serviceable under contracts, wouldn't contracts come down?
Lisa?
No, these are ones that are no longer, that are, how can I replace it? I mean, these are for items that are not on contracts. We have Xerox printers that are not on contracts. So that is what that is for. I may have misspoke on how I expressed that. The Xerox printers do not have a contract for service, but our other printers all have a contract through another company. So the how can I say it? There's some parts that are not going to be available for other printers that we're getting rid of. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep, I got it.
Okay.
For some reason, this is not linking with this, but email, so I just saw the email about the gas and oil actuals. And, I'm still just struggling with the gas price. This has, the town's gas price, gas alone, like diesel and number 2 fuel oil being pretty steady, but the gas price going up 60 cents when everything in the market has it going down. So.
Not
I'm
when
just
we bought it
struggling
though.
with that.
Again, the gas price for next year. We don't know what it's gonna be on January 1st, so we have to put in a blended number, so. The 325 is the blended number. So. I mean, we could put it lower, we could put it higher, but if next year it's 410 or something, it's just.
But that's never been like the price that the town's paying, based on what you guys have sent over, it's $1.62, $1.88, $2.10, $1.84, $2.02, $2.05, $2.47, $2.67, and it's jumping to $3.25.
Well, again, Lisa and we sit down, we go through all the numbers. Again, this year, the other numbers are 289 and 297, so we're at $3. Again, I can't look into the future. I don't know what it's gonna be next January, so I mean, we could lower it if you want, but.
Well, the diesel and the number 2 fuel oil makes sense. They're slight increases over this year, right? They're 7 cents over what we were paying this year for number 2 oil, which that barrel.
Those
price-
are locked in. The
Yeah.
oil and the diesel are locked in at, that's the rate that we're paying for a full year. Unfortunately, with gasoline, we can't get on a fiscal year basis. I'm pushing with CROG to try to get that to happen. So it makes it very difficult to lock in a number. Some of the things that we did do, however, was to reduce the number of gallons of gasoline. We're also locked into a certain amount of gallons that we will have to purchase, and whether we, if we don't purchase it, we still have to pay for it. It's the same thing that we do with diesel and heating oil. So the amount in the budget will also have a certain amount of gallons that we will have to pay for. I do understand what you're saying. I think our current price, Mike, is it close to $3 now?
260, it's 260,
267 or I think.
262. I think.
And then you have the other fees that go on top of it? Or no?
I'm not sure.
What is it called? The lust tax and all that other stuff?
It's 267.
So the
Whatever
other-
it is, I don't know. But,
The other thing.
so what we do is we try to look at the trends over the years. We try to take an average. Sometimes we'll throw out the high, sometimes we'll throw out the low, and just try to make an educated guess as to what the number would be. Unfortunately, it's, some years we've done well. Other years, the price came in higher than what we had budgeted. And, we ran into issues there. The other thing with this, certainly if there's savings, the savings will go back to the general fund. I know you don't want to increase the cost of anything because of course that impacts the taxes. However, if we had a crystal ball that was perfectly clear, it would be much easier to estimate it, but we just do the best consistent effort that's we've always done in calculating this. The other thing here too, and this is not so much in this particular budget, but more in the public works area. Most of their vehicles now are mostly diesel, but we did reduce the cost, the amount for their salt. I'm sorry I missed that piece of it last night of his budget, but I don't know if you discussed the amount of salt that was reduced in the public works budget. And the cost of salt has gone crazy. So if it turns out that he is going to need more salt or whatever, and the cost of fuel does go down, I mean, this will provide a little safety network, or we could just, figure something else out, putting freezes in place or whatever. But we're taking a chance on that salt account and just hoping that, the storms won't be as bad and we'll have a nice mild winter next year.
Okay.
We did talk about,
Sorry.
1 second, we did talk about the salt. And we did discuss that, Lisa. Go ahead, Mike.
So the gas numbers, just realize that everyone except for the red ones are the actual numbers we locked in at. So whatever was in the budget was higher. So, the 325 looks a little higher, but if I put the budgeted numbers, it would look different. So,
Yeah, I know. That's kind of my problem that I've been saying with the budget so far is, the returning $200,000+ to the end of the fund every year. And I'm trying to get my calculator to come up because I don't have a calculator on my iPad for some reason now. But if we're at 267 right now, that's 267 till December 31st, right?
it's for half a year, yeah.
Half the year, right? So that means half the year at 267, which means at 320 something, we're planning, it to be at like 350, 370 for the first half of next year, which I just think how I'm a conservative person, I'm a Republican, but like that numbers to me, I think there's room in there to kind of figure out I can't see it going that high.
Well,
just,
you could be very well right. We just can't see the future. I mean, I think 1 year is a long time ago, but like in the financial crash, we were above 4, we were like 411.
Yeah.
So, but
But-
yeah, I don't disagree with you. It's just
Yeah.
what number do you pick? You try to be a little conservative because you don't know what it's
Yeah.
gonna be at.
Yeah, I'm fine with a little conservative. I just think, the increase that we're seeing here. Is there a way to update that sheet that you guys gave us to put in what we budgeted so we can see what the variance is between budget and what we actually saw as a number?
I believe we can do that, yeah.
Okay, I would just like to see it because I think I think there's a little bit more than wiggle right now for that second half of the year. And it's risky, but you know, it's a risk I think I might be okay with. That's all that I have.
Thank you. Would you, Councilman Bree?
Yeah, I'm still on fuel and oil. The spreadsheet or the snippet that Mike gave us showed a 21% increase in the fuel costs. That's the gas line, which is the biggest. But this line is a 71% increase. So what accounts for the differential?
In this budget,
In this miscellaneous support services area.
that's the Lisa question.
I can answer that. And I don't have my spreadsheet in front of me, but I'm recalling from memory. During COVID time, we also had less use of the vehicles, less visits directly to people's homes and businesses, things like that for the building inspector. This account covers the building inspector, the assessor, the planner, the pool vehicle, the one pool car that everybody shares. And I'm trying to think of the public works director. I'm not sure if he's in there. So it covers the cost of the fuel for those vehicles. For the past couple of years, they weren't out on the road as much. Maybe we'll exclude the director of public works, but they weren't out as much as now. The building inspector's, extremely busy. He's been moving along. The amount of gallons used, when you look at the trends, if I recall correctly from my spreadsheet, the amount of actual gallons have increased. And this reflects the amount of gallons now being used over the past year.
So the FY20 actual, which would have been 2019 through 2020. So
Let me get to that page.
mostly before COVID, was $3,784. And the proposed budget,
1920, yeah.
the proposed budget for this year, or for the fiscal year 24, is $13,650. So I don't see anything, this budget.
Yeah, I really would need to look at the spreadsheet and see if there's anything else in there besides gasoline. Because I think it had to do with the increased amount of miles. I'm sorry, the increased amount of gallons being used. I have a spreadsheet that shows the amount of gallons that are used each year and the trending of all that. And it would have reflected that, or it could have included, we lock in, I think, with 30,000 gallons of gasoline per year for the contract. So what that means is we used almost 32,000 gallons, I think last year. So in the 30,000 that were locked in, I know the manager reduced some gallons in other areas of the budget, in other departments where they have gasoline. And like I said, I need to go back and see if I put the differential in there to make sure that we account for what we will have to pay for, whether we use it or not. That could also be the case, and I can get back to you on this.
That would be great.
To make sure I clarify it. Let me just make a note.
It just seems something's going on.
No,
here.
no, I understand. And also the increase in the cost doesn't help either.
Yeah, of course.
So that's compounding it, but let me just double check.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
In this area, I have the same question about printing and copying, moving to more digital services would save us money on not having to buy and maintain copy machines. And so I know already addressed that in some part, but I'm gonna continue to point it out, because I think it's important. And then does this budget increase, which is 15.71%, allow the department to meet its goals and objectives for fiscal year 24?
So. I believe yes, but you're asking Lisa, so I'll let her answer, but,
Oh, I'm
this is-
sorry, yes.
it's all right, Lisa, the
Okay, she's
printing
muted.
cost, this is for townwide printing, and it includes. All the council agendas and minutes, budget books, and other various things that we print.
Is that under this section?
Yep.
Under miscellaneous support?
Yep,
Okay.
and this would certainly, a great start would be to eliminate the proposed budget book for council and send them electronically, because we would, that is quite a strain, I'm sure. Especially if there's, redone versions essentially. It would save a lot of staff time as well, ink and paper. So those are some of the things. Lisa, you want to answer the
You did.
question on the, oh, she did? Okay.
I
guess-
guess sufficient, I feel it's sufficient.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's communication, right, Brian? What you're talking about, the printing, that's communications, or? is it-
Yes, I believe so.
Cause there's no printing line in.
There are certain, the communications is service contracts, right? Or is it, the?
Communications is postage.
Mail, it's all town mail.
Okay, so there's no printing actually in this, right? Service contracts, other services, office supplies.
You would have under office supplies, the cost of the paper, and under service contracts, that would be the various contracts that we have, not only for the telephone system, the copiers, the printer maintenance contracts, the postage machine contracts, all of that is under that service contracts line item.
Thank you.
Only add if we do digitize the budget books, it's important to make sure that they're searchable, like it's a PDF file. Sometimes PDFs get loaded and you can't control F and look for anything, and I think that saves a lot of time to look through various pages, so. I'm definitely supportive if it saves money, but if we have to then scroll back and forth instead of, doing the quick functions that, like we can do with the presentation right now, so.
And
Okay,
commentable.
Yeah.
My thought was, even if you didn't have a PDF format, you go right online.
Yeah,
And, I mean, you have so many additional opportunities by looking at that budget book online, because there's different ways you can show your graphs. If you don't like the graph one way, there's some options to change to how the graph looks. There's different ways to sort the data or download data. So there's a lot more opportunity by using the online version and pulling things up quicker. But certainly that's a preference that each person has.
I do agree, definitely. I usually keep open ClearGov while I'm bouncing between the physical and the digital, so it is an excellent service. All right, are there any other questions regarding miscellaneous before we hop over to IT? Counselor Khan?
I do agree with Tammy and Katie about the gas. Gas price is way too high. Even though Michael sent me email this morning, it still is. To me, I'm in this business, and I don't think that price for even for this year. No. Even though I do have a branded gas, and I don't think you guys, they supply you branded gas. And this is BJ, Big Wise, whatever it is, we're buying number two fuel. And that's what you're getting, and that's way. There's a difference between my price and their price is about 70 to 80 cents difference. So I think that's way too much. That's number one. Number two, Lisa. What is for the town employee, whomever they're taking the cost home, all the managers decided Brian, how far they are allowed to travel?
Okay, there's really
Is there rules?
There's not many people taking cars home as, under this particular budget. There's only one person taking a vehicle home. The rest of the vehicles remain on site and are used only during the day for town business. The assessor does not take a car home, but he uses it to visit the various properties during the day. Same thing with the planning department. I'm trying to think who else is in there. The planner, the assessor, the pool cars, none of those cars go home with people. There's only one special contractual setup that was approved many years ago, and that is with the building inspector. Under this, I'm talking about this department where it's budgeted. He's the only one that takes it home. And the allowance was permitted for him to be able to take it home and come back. I looked at that last year when I was interim manager. I did look at that because the concern was he was getting called in on weekends and nights quite often. And he'd have to come home from home and come to Tolland to respond to an emergency or whatever the situation may be. And I don't have the report anymore, but back then it was quite often. And if that were the case, that you'd have to pay mileage and everything else for him to be going back and forth during the off hours. You'd lose the ability for him to get right to the emergency situation because he'd have to come to the town hall, get the vehicle, go back. It was very involved, and I know it was an agreement made way before me, but I looked at it to see how often he was coming back and forth for emergency situations, and it was to be able to make sure he could respond. So there was a significant amount back then. I don't know what it's like now because I'm not.
The only one incidents, I know that when Brian called at the mobile gas station, that was the only incidents I remember that Jim came to.
Oh, no,
Oh, no, there's others.
almost, well, I mean,
Fires.
That's what my,
yes, no, he comes in often. In fact, in the town manager's report weekly, it says, his activity report is in there and how many times he responded to something. And I believe it's even delineated to off hours. So there's minor fire things that happen, where he has to come in, and inspect the building. So, no, he comes in, I would define as often. And I would also define this as a competitive, balance towards his salary being lower than most people in his position, to have that. So it plays on a couple of edges here, but, certainly he does respond often and when needed.
has anybody else? Highway department or whatever it is, department, they take their vehicle home?
And Director Lappin, yep,
What about anybody else
no,
besides those two?
yep.
I thought there were four.
There was-
Is it, Lisa, do you know? Is it-
Brian,
Oh, the assistant directors, I think they take.
you will have Paul Russell, who is the assistant director, who, the snow in the middle of the night response, trees down, things like that. And you have Scott Howe, who is on the highways, and Dennis Carr. So you have the three of those individuals who take the trucks home, but they're very local. They're not that far away. I don't have the exact miles from town hall, but they're not very far away from where town hall is, from my understanding.
Beside light,
And then you
Scott.
would have the fire emergency, the fire marshal and the fire chief.
I'm not talking about them, I'm talking
Okay.
about just the town hall.
Yeah, the town staff would be the three people from the Public Works Department, the highway supervisor, the buildings and parks supervisor, the assistant director, and Scott Lappin would be the director of Public Works as well. So you have four people out of Public Works and the building inspector. Those are the only people that I'm aware of that take vehicles home.
Is there? To me, to me, I mean, if I'm applying for a job. And I'm not, I know what what I'm applying for is like, I don't think so there's in the contract, but he knows that. I should know that if the town, the manager called me, I should be there, but like. Is it a
It's also part of the personnel policy, but Mike could speak to that.
24/7, I'm gonna give him a convenience of driving back and forth, whatever it is, and that car is not, even though that car, the Jim drive it, white car, whatever it is, I can't even tell that's Jim, that's a town car. It's a white pickup truck. I cannot recognize him anywhere, so like, he can be anywhere. So it has to be a logo on it, if he's using it. But driving to Portland, I think it's about 40 to 50 minutes drive every 5 days a week, and, doesn't make sense to me.
And Jim will be here on Monday. We can certainly cover that. And I believe he does have a magnetic logo that he does put on the door. But I could be wrong, but that's the way I understood it. But certainly we can discuss that on Monday and look at mileage if you'd like.
Okay,
Is it Monday or Tuesday? What days are they?
whatever it
It
is.
is Monday. Thank you.
Monday.
So it's like, it doesn't make sense to me, like, you are the manager, I mean, you are 24/7, I do know that, but just like, John is 24/7, but anybody else is like, you know what? The cost doesn't justify to me.
So when there's a fire in a building, and the occupants, we have to decide if the building is inhabitable. It's a cooperative effort between the fire marshal, the fire chief, and the building inspector. That does not work on a 9 to 5 schedule, and that happens off hours, more often than not. And Jim responds to those, but I'll be happy to have him explain that when he comes in.
And that's why we got, number 2 over there, right there, so it's like it's 24/7, but. he's-
Unfortunately, he's not a building inspector.
Okay. But there's more to talk about.
Fantastic.
It's like, it doesn't serve the purpose, at the cost. That's all I'm talking about.
I understand that.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question for that. Is when those town employees take a vehicle home, is that just for transport to and from their home?
Correct.
Or is that for permitting personal use for those vehicles?
Personal use, and I believe do we have a take-home vehicle policy, Mike?
Oh, there's a transportation policy, but I don't know if it specifies, I mean.
I'll look
it's
into
in-
that,
That would be great.
but they don't drive it like to Walmart.
Yeah,
Right,
but-
that's what I was
It's just de minimis, like if they stop at the grocery store on the way home or something.
Okay, thank you, because I think that's an important distinction as well.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The logo on all of those cars, the logo is about that. It's about that big. Cup, I cannot see it. If you wanna do it, let them have a big logo, Tolland, whatever it is. So, as you said, they're gonna go to, goddamn Walmart.
Right.
You know.
Readily identifiable is the term you're looking for. If you'd like the vehicles to be readily identifiable, we can look at that. I had all the employees get jackets, and vests and such to make them more readily identifiable. I can do the same with the cars at not a great expense.
So because it's the town expense and if people, everybody can recognize, you know what? It's from town of Tolland.
Yep.
Simple. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other questions, we'll hop over to IT telecommunications.
Okay, total budget, $198,265, an increase of $3,579, mainly due to the increase of software and hardware support. Lisa is available to take any questions in this regard.
All right, open the floor to questions.
IT?
Yep, IT telecommunications.
I got nothing.
All right, Councilman Murray.
You know, I think the trend here on software cost increases is probably a good thing because it hopefully means we're spending less money on paper. What was my question? Sorry. Yeah. Is this software and equipment meeting the technology needs of the town?
Yes,
Awesome. And so is this proposed budget sufficient for the department goals and objectives for fiscal year 24?
yes, as far as we are planning so far, yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, we'll move to revenue services.
Right. This year, the revenue services, the budget increased by $7,515 for a total budget of $178,999. A total. The regular payroll accounts increased by, was the majority of that, $6,558. And then the expense accounts increased by another $957 for professional services contracts, printing and communication. Increasing due to QDS increases and postage increases. Lisa, you want to explain what QDS is?
That is Quality Data Services. That is our tax software that allows us to send out the bills, collect the bills, keep track of the delinquencies, everything to do with the tax collection system.
Got it. So we have Michelle here and Lisa and myself to answer any questions.
Open the floor to questions.
Michelle, Colleen, and then.
All right, Councilman Murray.
I do have a question. Thank you. And you talk about efforts that have been made to move away from paper usage to more digital usage in this area.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Michelle.
Michelle?
Oh, I thought you asked if I could talk about it. Sure. Well, I'm sorry.
Michelle's here, she can answer.
Right, we do
Well,
have,
Go ahead.
holding companies where we do, we send them files where we don't have to do paper copies. Unfortunately, you can't do that with motor vehicle or personal property or any of the small banks. They still require the paper copies of the invoices. But we do have, like, for instance, last year we had 3,100 bills that were sent electronically to the S4 holding company. So we are trying to reduce that. Unfortunately, we can't do it with a motor vehicle because the bill numbers change every year. So if they do sign up for paperless billing, we can't do it with motor vehicle. And many people, or most people, want that paper copy to have because we have the 2 installments, one for July and one for January.
Okay, great. Thank you. And is revenue services, is this an area or department we considered regionalizing?
It's been, you want mind if I get it, Michelle? It's something that's been looked at, but there's so many variances from town to town. If we're like a countywide government where everyone had the same thing, we could do that. Even in that regard, when you look at the types of software, it goes by the total increases by the number of people using it and the people you're serving. So that has been looked at, but it's not necessarily overly viable in this part of the country. Anything else you want to add, Lisa?
No, that's good enough.
Thank you. And is this proposed budget sufficient for the department to meet goals and objectives for fiscal year 24? Yes. Thank you.
One quick question for you, Michelle. So I was looking at the program objectives. Could you outline what improving visibility and security entails in terms of, is that security in terms of like software IT security, or is it more facility security? Because I know the managers talked in the past about having more security in place for town staff.
I mean, that we try to, within our office, make sure that, we have all of our. I'm actually not sure what you're.
Yeah, I'm on the website, but yeah, it has the program objectives and it mentions, I think, yeah, continuing to improve cash flow and efficiency, and the second was continue to
Oh,
improve
efficiency,
visibility
yeah.
and security.
So we make sure that, one person that's collecting cash, another person's counting, another person's checking. Make sure that all of our
Okay.
trucks are in a row and that there's, everything's in place and that we're not.
Strong internal controls in the office, as well as making sure, all the security features are in place, as well as the protection of the assets.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
great, thank you. That's it for me. Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to assessment services.
Okay, an increase this year of $39,235 for a total budget of $298,260. Jason is here to answer questions along with Lisa. Again, the majority of the increase is due to payroll and negotiated wages. And then there was a $262,653 increase, mainly due to the increase in cost for the vendor professional services. And assessment and again printing, price guide for the second pricing guide book increases, sorry. Any questions?
I'll just say first, Jerry, thank you I know you probably received emails multiple times about ordinance 60, so appreciate that communication, continue to work with Bob towards getting that updated, so just wanted to give you kudos there. Are we coming up on a rebound year soon?
It's 24.
24, so next year. All right.
Yeah, so we'll go out with an RFP this spring to see what we can get for prices.
Okay, so the plan is, I'm trying to recall in the past, we've done it internally or in-house to save funds. Is that intended for next year?
It's up to you guys.
Okay,
My plan was to go and go out.
I
for
would
bids.
certainly hope so.
You can get for prices and then,
if you can offer it cheaper, we'll stick with you.
sure.
All right, that's it for me for initial questions. I'll pop it over to Councilman Nuccio and Councilman Murray. Well, thanks.
I just have one quick question, Jason, on the professional services. Can you give a little more detail on what is increasing on that? The explanation was pretty general.
Both of our Cammon and our admin vendor, which is QBS, have both increased substantially. Every year they say they're holding off on increases and it finally comes to a point where they can't hold on anymore. So over the last 2 years, they've increased. Last year, I believe vision was 12%, quality was 5%. And quality was more this year, vision was less this year, but together, both of those software providers as well.
And then the only other question I have is, I don't know if you have anything in here in regard to the law that changed. I think it's supposed to go into effect October 1st for the motor vehicle valuations. I know that is shifting how all motor vehicle valuations are supposed to occur. I know there's been a lot of pushback that the towns aren't ready for this and don't have what they need. So I don't know if you have anything accounted for in here for that.
No, I actually sent you an email today.
I saw that. I haven't gotten to it yet.
It's for next year. It's for October 23 bonus.
Right.
And the proposed legislation is to push it out a year because our vendors just can't
They can't.
make the changes that are necessary.
Yeah. And is there gonna be a cost associated with that, you think, from the vendors?
No, I think, quality is our vendor. They're pretty good at taking what's given in a legislative year and implementing it, but this is a whole new revamp.
It's a totally different base, yeah.
It's a whole, all the way down to DMV. So
Yeah.
DMV has to change the way they class things. We have to include, trucks, commercial trucks and personal property declaration, which we've never done. It's a lot of moving parts and, for OPM to just get it implemented in 1 year and have this happen is too much.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. On the moving trucks to the personal property part, do you anticipate having to do more work or collections around that? Because now it's all under personal property, which is self-declared.
It should be more accurate, because the declaration of the value would be an estimate by me.
Right.
So I get cab and chassis for F-550, and I can only assume that there's an aluminum dump body on it that has 10 grand, or I kind of have to know the vehicles, so that makes it difficult. But if they can give us a more accurate number, that would be helpful. But they're trying to work out a lot of the kinks involved there, which would be a straight depreciation schedule. Which they said would differ from a homeowner versus a business owner for the same vehicle,
Yeah,
just because the name is different. So there's things that they never thought of were gonna affect it, which is what's causing all the problems, but.
okay, so you don't have anything built in here that you think you're gonna need in relation to that, because
Now
it's 10/1/2023.
They don't, right now, quality's not saying they would do anything, because it would change everything that we do. I can't imagine they would change anything or gonna charge us more for anything. One thing that might save us is the, NADA is the pricing guide we use. They've gone up substantially over the years. And as an association, we buy into, the whole state buys all of their books at once, the price of motor vehicles. And if they go to an MSRP less depreciation, then we won't need them. And that will eliminate our costs, but I'm sure that there's something else, because we still have to get MSRP somehow. But if we're not pricing,
They're saying that DMV is gonna feed that. I don't necessarily buy it, but that's what they're saying. Would that cover, would the NADA manuals be under your books and subscriptions?
yeah, that's part of that, yeah. And
Part
they've
of
gone,
that.
like I said, they've gone up substantially, and really, they've only gone up to where all their competitors are. So we used to get such a great deal, because as an association, we bought the books for the whole state.
Right, you gotta buy both.
And we split that cost with DMV actually, so. They're trying to save money on that. They've just, since Price Waterhouse bought them, it's just been going up, and up, and up. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I know that salary line, we had an explanation, but this one's up 17%. Which is considerably more than we see in other departments. Is there an added employee that's annualized in here?
Lisa, I believe that was our adjustment several months ago. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay, there was an adjustment,
Yeah.
based on retention.
got it. I remember now. Thank you. Why are we transferring money out of this department to CNRE?
That's a Lisa question.
Yeah, CNRE is for the reval. So we budgeted, we used to budget 40,000 a year for it. But since I've been doing the in-house reval, then probably need to be 10,000, and they're just trying to placeholder to my.
Okay, so the $10,000 a year funds the cost of the reval.
Yeah.
And so we,
Every 5 years.
yeah, got it. Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And is this budget sufficient for the department to meet program goals and objectives for fiscal year 23-24?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll get to Board of Assessment Appeals.
Total budget $600.
I'm gonna push on this one because it never spends $600. It's only $600, but it spends like 200 on a good year. If we need to pick a couple $100 up somewhere, every year I mention this one.
I'm happy to look at that.
There's $200 in there for cooling, so because of the turnover with the members, it's $50 a head for that class, and I never know if they're gonna take it or not. So it's gotta be there.
Yeah.
just In case they want to take it. I think in my 10 years, I've probably had 6 people take it, so. But I don't know where I'd steal it from if it wasn't there. So. And then, of course, we have to do legal notices. So that's $300 right there.
Haven't spent $300 in the last couple of years, so. I hear what you're saying. I get you. Just,
All right. I was gonna say that anyone can add into that commentary that I know it's every other year that there's usually a bill in the House or the Senate about, getting rid of the requirement to post in the newspapers and just let it be online,
there.
so.
It's in there and
It wouldn't impact this year, but hopefully in future years it does go through, maybe that would be an area.
The
of savings.
CCM is supposed to be pushing that. That was one of their number 1 or 2 priorities.
Yeah,
there's a bill, that's there, that's there every year.
yeah.
Exactly, you know, well, and there's still people that will argue that there are an entire class of people who look in the newspaper to see those.
Those are newspaper owners.
No, certain demographics, yeah, certain demographics don't read the paper and look in the paper, so. And they don't like going on the internet. And disenfranchised.
All right, Councilman Murray?
This indicates that there are 2 public hearings, one in March and one in September. So the advertising is $300 for 2 public hearings, is that right?
Yeah, legal notices, roughly about $150.
Okay. Okay, that's a lot, but
Yeah, it doesn't cost us anything to have the meeting.
Yeah.
We have volunteers, so.
yeah, I know, yeah, okay. And is this proposed budget sufficient for the department to meet goals and objectives fiscal year 24?
Overly efficient.
Thank you.
Look at.
All right, that brings us to town clerk Kathy.
Hi, everybody.
Good to see you.
All right, town clerk's office saw an increase of $10,554, which should be pretty easily explained out here. Total budget of $152,828. The payroll budget increased by $7,554. And the increase of $3,000 due to the cost of the printing supplies, land records, and permanent minute books, paper binders, etc.
Open for questions.
I actually just have one question. How long do you have to keep the minute books for, like the minute? Permanently. All right, so that's why I think you guys have pushed back on when we've asked for like 8 million things in the packets, because you have to keep all those with the minutes, right? We do, yeah, okay. Is this just paper and print, like the paper and the?
Paper and digital for my department. Yeah, we have, everything in the vault is digitalized at some point. Like every time we finish a book, we'll send it out for digitalization. And we're required by state statute, they govern what we need to keep, and in what form. And we're required to keep the minutes, for everything, council, commission, boards, land records and maps in paper form.
Where do we keep all of them? I can only imagine there's
She's
like
got a
a.
vault.
Come visit.
I've seen the vault. I've been in the vault, but I can't imagine like all the meeting minutes for like the eternity of Tolland.
Yeah, we have the first book was the selectmen from 17 something. It's.
All right, now I'm definitely coming to visit.
Yeah,
Now I'm
yeah.
coming to visit. That's all I got. I got a date now. I'm good.
All right, Councilman Murray?
What is the overtime and temporary help lines? What does that cover?
Sure, the overtime and the temporary help are for, specifically for election season and the chance that we need extra help. We have needed that in the past. If the volume is high enough and the 2 of us in the office can't handle it in a timely fashion. And, for emergencies, that we are a tightly run 2-person department. And if there is a sickness, a death, a family leave, 1 person can't maintain the office. So we would need to bring in someone as a temporary help. And that's what that's set aside for.
Thank you. The service contracts line went up a bit, quite a bit, between fiscal year 20 and 21, and it stayed at that level. What is that service contracts cover?
That line covers our dog system and our onboard system, PAS and clerk base. And those contracts haven't changed.
Okay. The code updates line, same kind of a thing, it jumped for fiscal year 22. What does that cover?
Yeah, that covers everything that we need to submit to general code for the maintenance and preservation of the town code and charter. It covers ordinances that we need to send in. And if you have a year where you pass a larger number of ordinances or code changes or updates, I have to submit those to general code and they cost each time we have to update.
On it.
Yeah.
So is this proposed budget sufficient for the department to meet goals and objectives for fiscal year 24?
Yes.
Thank you.
Then I was gonna circle back to Amy's question about the storage. So is the current storage sufficient, or do you see down the road that you might need potential expansion? I know in the past, like recreation, there was effort to expand over there and we retrofitted some of the rooms for storage. Do you think you might need some?
I think we have a good number of years before we need to talk about, or I need to figure out how to buy, and that would be the historic preservation grant. I would need to buy new storage units, but we have, each one of the land record cabinets hold approximately 10 years of books. So we have a whole empty storage unit down there. So we've got maybe a decade to go before we need to look into more storage, and we have plenty of space still in our math cabinets.
Great. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, Kathy. So now we'll move on to public safety. We have Rob and Vika and Keith Michael with us in the audience tonight as well.
Correct. So, moving through the PowerPoint, is an overview of, Steve Vitale's, staffing in public safety to include, obviously the fire department and ambulances, a rundown of the staffing, and a lot of explanations as to, what the staff does in regards to, day-to-day operations, extra stuff they do, within the community. And a lot of the services they provide to our town. I'll go to the Explorer post, the 40, which is a program that's currently on hold, but you should know that roughly 25% of the career staff came from the Explorer post. So we're going to re-examine that moving forward. Where are we here? Yeah, so have a look at your book. It really runs down everything here, all the command staff, the town employees, the volunteers, the mandatory training, extensive training that they all have to go through. It defines out the larger apparatus and the medium or light duty apparatus. As well as some of the stuff that was that the department has that was not paid for with tax dollars. But moving into that, obviously after that is our fiscal sheet, and that's why we're here. So if anyone has any questions, there's 3 of us here to answer.
All right. John, good to hear from you.
That's right. I've been waiting for public safety.
Yes.
So there are a couple of areas that were lowered here. And I read through the, I'm talking about ambulance and fire suppression. And I read through the explanation. I wonder if you could just elaborate a little bit. It says training, development, furniture and fixtures. My math tells me it's about $56,000. I wonder if you could elaborate on those things that you made up that difference with. Furniture and fixtures, equipment rental and other equipment categories.
You're showing a drop of 56,000.
I looked at, department proposed and manager proposed for ambulance and fire suppression. Looks like it was lowered
Do you have a page on that?
to 64.
Thank you. Are you looking at the law enforcement drop of 41,000?
No, I'm looking at the ambulance,
I'm on 264.
264.
So, the department proposed this and you approved that.
I based it on actuals.
Okay, and that goes, okay. Same thing with fire suppression.
On, yes, on actuals, previous years and discussion, with the chief.
Okay, so how did the, I guess then the question becomes, how did the chief arrive at his proposal?
I don't know if you did or I did, I think I did, but, John, do you have any thoughts?
I'm still recovering from that meeting.
I'm curious to know what that conversation looked like too.
So what unfortunately happens is you guys don't see Brian doesn't, or Tony doesn't see everything that comes in because I have the career and the volunteer putting in budget. So I make significant cuts at my level and then try to, obviously forecast the best I can. And we went through from line item to line item and compromised different sections of the categories, furniture and equipment. That was probably cut out because some of that would have been replacements for some of the equipment that would have replaced Station 340 that's gonna be dormant. So we cut and chose different pieces of the overall budget.
Okay, and I mean, these are two categories that are pretty important to probably everybody in town, ambulance and fire suppression. So are you comfortable with where you are now and you feel like you can offer the same kind of service, level services that you've been offering for the town? With the budget as the manager's proposal here?
Okay, so
Of course, John.
So, obviously, we never know what the forecast is gonna, predict. Obviously, between weather, shortage of the volunteers, shortage of the staffing, call levels rising, increasing of, different buildings, different types of things, but, the call trend's up, obviously. So we will try to provide the best service that we can, given the best budget that we can, and try to sustain what we're doing. But the horizon in the future don't look like it's gonna be, so that's why we tried to apply for the safer grants and trying to, offset some of the payroll and some of the other accounts. We've been unsuccessful with those grants, we've been unsuccessful with the assistance of the firefighters grants as well as like we have been for the airbags. Unfortunately, I took a dent for $500,000 out of my capital a few years ago, so we'll do the best we can and, I got a phenomenal staff that are giving it the best they can.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Egan. Councilman Nuccio.
First, I have a question regarding, last year, we passed legislation that put, 1.5 million in the budget to assist volunteer fire departments that were making highway calls. Have we utilized that at all?
So the state of Connecticut have given out $850,000 out of that $1 million something budget.
Yeah.
We've recouped, approximately $2,200, 2,000. Yeah,
We did six total.
6,000. So, I know we're doing it. So we try to offset those because we try not to double bill, because we have the rescue billing program.
Yeah.
So we try to look at the lower, evaluators for those type of billing. And if we bill out to the state, we do not do the rescue billing. So
So explain to me, what's the rescue billing?
the rescue billing is anytime that we go out for any type of accident, crash, any type of other thing. But we try to look at, not double dipping. So
So you're doing like regular insurance?
So the main, like the tractor trailer, the box truck this morning, the big calls on the highway that drag for the hours, I'll do the rescue billing because we'll recoup a larger value than versus the $500 flat rate fee. The
Okay.
problem is that we started to adjust our revenue numbers and looking at stuff, and the proposed budget from the governors is that they're taking that out.
Yeah, that's not gonna stay that way.
Nope, I'm just,
He actually didn't even know it was out. I brought it up at St. Patrick's Day parade.
yeah, I was a little concerned about it, because we're,
Yeah.
we're trying to balance it, but we just went through a whole training aspect of creating a online sheet and, online stuff that make it happen, but, the small car fires, the small stuff that we go out there and we're not out there for a long period of time, we hit those,
For the
for the
for the
500.
statement, okay.
Yeah.
All right, another question that I had on here is we're showing overtime increasing by 24%, but I know we just hired an additional head last year, so why is overtime going up 24%?
Correct, so you're adding another guy, 'cause you added a guy halfway through the year from the year before, then you added the other guy this year, so. There's, I believe, 5 public safety officers out of that ambulance section. And we also have been trying to catch up on vacation days, sick time, the COVID kind of put a dent on a lot of stuff because we either can't find the part-timers. I think I try to increase some of the part-time help as well. But when we can't find someone, we have to either hold them over a shift or call them in for a shift. And our calls are getting harder because obviously our staff fluctuate between 6 AM and 6 PM. So sometimes I have to call the staff in early if they go to a mutual aid call. I'll bring the 10 o'clock crew in, or if it's that late day call, I try to bring the guys back from 2 or something else to cover the shortfalls, to keep both the ambulances and keep the services running. Like today, we tried everything we could to bring staff back. We went as far as Manchester today for coverage wise to assist, for that large fire.
So, I know we've talked about this in prior years. For these mutual aid calls, we're billing, correct?
We do not. It's a mutual agreement from town to town.
Well, no, I mean, from an ambulance perspective.
Any of the ambulance stuff we bill out, that's all separate, and all the ambulance stuff goes into the ambulance revenue account. We also take the rest of your billing at the end of the year, that gets added into that same account.
Okay, I know we talked about the mutual aid before. I'd like to understand the breakdown between our call and the mutual aid calls, because, with a 24% increase in overtime and the staff number and all of that, our taxpayers are paying to answer other towns' calls.
Correct.
So I'd like to know how many times they're coming to Tolland.
So we've been trying to run the numbers back and forth, and I'll give you a perfect example. Obviously, we have the shortage of the ambulances, still being built or being delivered. So we're pushing our operating costs or other costs up higher in those other categories. But our last ambulance has been down for over 2.5 weeks or so. We lost approximately 20 to 25 calls, losing, I came up with the number today, around $15,000 to $18,000. Just a simple, quick number. We've already lost $20,000 in the last 2 weeks, which is revenue, but Crystal Lake, Vernon, Coventry, those other towns have come back into us because we're down at one ambulance. But many of the calls in the surrounding communities, they're running back-to-back calls. So we're going to Ellington, they have 2 ambulances, but they're going to a 3rd call. So Vernon is substantially has a great plan that they put in place because they did a huge hiring. And they're running solid 3 ambulances during the daytime, blowing the ambulances down at nighttime. But what's end up happening is the part-timers or some of the other people that work similar to Coventry, Vernon, and everywhere else, some of the commercial services have taken a lot of the ARPA funding and some of the other stuff and has increased their rates, and they've stolen a lot of people from different communities. So Vernon had a hard time for a while to end up trying to hire staffing to fill those positions, so they could only run 1 or 2 ambulances. And it goes from community to community. And when you get in a shortage of volunteers, those nighttime after hours or early morning calls, it's every community is doing almost the same thing.
Yeah, if we can get the numbers on like the mutual aid and when they're coming out, when we're going out, so we can kind of look at that, I'd appreciate that. And you brought up a good point on the volunteers there. I'm wondering if there's anything in this budget right now or needs to be. I know we have a massive shortage all over the state, probably more so all over the country, for getting people to volunteer, especially for like volunteer firemen and stuff like that. Is there anything that we can be doing, be it advertising or promotional or anything like that, to try to get more volunteers? How are we doing
I've been
with
instructed,
volunteers?
I've obviously been instructed by our town manager to come up with a better written implementation plan for recruitment and retention. And with that being said, we recently have started running for the last month or 2, some in-house classes. As you see, we have the stuff with lead, everything else. We have a brand new instructor that we're certified that we're hoping to start running some more EMC classes in-house in Tolland to attract more people around. The saving grace that we have for right now is the UConn
Yeah.
student-based program, but then we suffer summertime when they leave or they go away. But, it's a huge asset to have those. That's what's mainly keeping your program, a combination department right now, going for nighttime weekends, because a lot of them are pulling the shifts. And that's where one of my goals down the road is always to start trying to increase those hours, so we're not burning those type of people out.
I think that's something that we need to start thinking about, whether it's, some money in here or advertising or what is. You mentioned that the Explorer program is on hold. right?
So basically,
Why?
the state of Connecticut with fire prevention, just basically changed all their junior fire cadet programs. So we have to look at if we go to start the junior program back up or Explorer program, then I'd be sitting down with Mike Wilkinson saying, we're gonna cover the insurance cost. Or do I stick with the Boy Scouts of America that covers the liability, the cost and everything else, but yet those Boy Scouts being explorers can't do everything a junior firefighter can. So when I go to junior firefighter, then my physical and other services category is gonna go up another $5,000 or $6,000. And then the training's gonna go up and then I gotta buy them the gear. So it's a balancing act that I have right now. I've always stuck with Boy Scouts of America because I figure the cost of liability, insurance and the rest of it is a much larger value. Because we have them for a year to 2 years and some have joined and left in 6 months, but it also takes a strong candidate team to run that program. So I have to pick a couple different individuals to say, hey, you either gotta come back at nighttime. So is that another taxation on a volunteer to come back and teach another class or volunteer more time to teach those explorers, or do I issue it to a paid staff and say, hey, I'm gonna pay you through 2 hours, 3 hours to come back and teach and educate, train on one night a week or something like that. So it's a large task to take on. And I don't have a lot of staffing.
So, if I can build on that, one of my goals when I got here was, aside from an overall, trying to, really improve an overall positive culture change. I also wanted to, really look at the, recruitment of the volunteer firemen and how it's approached, because it really mirrors what law enforcement went through over the last, 10 years, and of course now has jumped back into it really hard in recruitment. There are some more modern things that we can certainly do to help and target our volunteers that in our community to try to come aboard. Social media is obviously something we can hit harder. And I've asked John, it's in his goals with coming up with a better recruitment plan, and I'm obviously happy to help with anything we can do with that. But that is absolutely key. And one of my maybe 3 goals in public safety was recruitment.
Okay, I'd like to see if we can cost benefit analysis on what it would take to bring the Explorers back online. What time commitment and dollar commitment it would take. Because it's a great program.
I'd add on to that, is we're pulling 25%. So the goal is you want to get them either A, to be volunteers, or B, to be our full-time people.
Well, eventually, right? So 25%, exactly.
25% is not bad.
No, it's not. And it's also an investment in the kids in this town. And I know Kelly worked a lot with this is like a big thing for the high school kids. This is something that it's positive influence. It's good for their mental health. It's also community service. It's a lot of things that are all pluses for the town.
Agree.
So I'd like to know what does it take for us to get an Explorer program back, get back into the high school and, and start feeding our recruitment pool. Yeah, the high school age kids.
I didn't know it was in the high school.
We used to, like a lot of recruitment from the high school, not middle, right? Yeah, it's like the 14 to 18.
Right.
Was it tied into the school?
So we did recruitment. We were allowed to go to, they had an open program in the middle school. So when the kids were going into the high school, it was like a job share thing.
Yeah.
And we were allowed to go and set up a booth there.
That's great.
Tolland High School principal at the time, I forget what his,
Fox, I think.
yeah, allowed two of the high school kids to come to the middle school and also answer any questions.
I know it was going on even as recently as when Cassidy was, Alex was in.
Yes.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, my sister was in there.
yeah, it was, so it wasn't that long ago. John?
So there's 2 programs, obviously, from the state level and the federal level. So there's the STEEP program that we tried once before, instituting at the Tolland Intermediate School. And that hits that age group. It gets them prepared for that middle school level. But it's all educational. We tried to see if the schools were tied into their curriculum, because teachers actually get tied into their curriculum program. We were one of the first towns in the states to do that stuff. It didn't work out well. They just did one big overall session. But there's another program that they recently started also with the Teen CERT program. So some kids might not want to be the junior firefighter, but the Teen CERT can tie into benefiting the CERT program as well. So that's another program we can look at. But Simsbury, West Hartford, and a few other towns right now are trying to come up with a curriculum, like Brian had said. to try to get something that would be credited base wise through the educational system to push into public safety, fire, police and everything else. So Simsbury right now is coming up with a program that we're just waiting for them to unveil it. I already had a contact, I already got somebody that's already talked to them. Cause I won't recreate the wheel. I'll copy and paste and try to institute something here. So hopefully if it gets into that school system, then the superintendents will all start talking about it and we can push that forward.
Okay, if we can manage to get something like that before our final budget discussions, it might be worthy of something. Yeah,
Okay.
or, to look at the money that's left over from this fiscal year.
Got it. Transfer it to the public safety.
You gonna give me an Explorer program back? And a junior cert program, yes?
We'll do our best, like I said.
Oh my God, we're gonna need a truck.
The door is open, right?
I think that's all that I have for us, the ambulance and the fire. I don't know if we're doing all this at once, so.
I'm kind of jumping a little bit to everything.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, like, are we, like, just go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna switch gears to ACO. I know probably ask this question every year. The chief, is the building for the ACO sufficient? Or is there gonna be any need? Because obviously you have some data about, the number of licenses, is it sufficient for the ACO needs?
Animal
Animal control officer, sorry. Is it sufficient and is there need for renovation or replacement in the near future?
We talked about that, like, for the last few years,
Oh, yeah.
that if there's a need, right? It's
Yep.
just not in the capital plan. I never made a need of it.
Yeah,
So I went with Director Lappin 2 days ago, to look at the new, whole building, he calls it. At any rate, while we were there, we looked at the kennel, for lack of a better term, for exactly this purpose. We will get that on CIP, moving forward, because on the outside, it doesn't look that bad, but it's really, beat up inside too as well.
yeah, from what I remember talking over the past few years, it's very comparable to the conditions when we did the tour of the firehouses. Internally, it's rusted, it's not the best quality, so. And then the follow-up is the program objectives with the discussions for Littleton, Ashford. I know they've been taking place year after year. I'm guessing they haven't been that fruitful or there's not much traction. And I guess my follow-up would be, have we considered other communities? Obviously, we're doing, economic development partnerships with Mansfield, Coventry, Bolton. Would any of those communities be worthwhile to reach out to for regionalization since they have similar, livestock and other populations in terms of sharing equipment or services?
Nobody has it,
Yes, please.
So basically, you just gotta be careful how far out you go. If you go, obviously to the town of Ashford, which we tried to tie in, it's a different court system.
Yeah.
But when you do regionalization, you gotta get the 2 or 3 communities to all to come to an agreement of where is that really gonna go? And who's gonna be okay with traveling to go get their dog or coming back? And then looking at the tie-in.
Yeah.
It was one of the items that I did bring up to Brian when he first got here. Obviously time and, everything else that's going on, so many projects, it was just not one that we had a discussion this year. But I'm sure with, Brian's energy that he would love to entertain a conversation with, the town of Wellington and possibly Ashford, because I think it's a win-win for us to, 3 towns with 3 trucks and all part-time staffing, to try to look and create something that's uniformed. Because like you said, we're on borrowed time with the pound.
Yeah, no, and if we can plan in such a way that the new facility maybe attracts a revenue generator, or at least, some kind of sharing similar to mutual aid, perhaps even better than the mutual aid agreement you have for your.
Right, and that's,
equipment.
that's the big driver
Yeah.
right now in the obviously the budgeting is because the communication factor with the ACOs and going. Going from town to town around wise, everything else wise, that's a huge cost driver.
And I know you put comparison data in the presentation.
Yeah.
So I guess, this is probably somewhat in line with Councilman Murray's question, but do you think the ACOs that we have in place right now compared to other towns, do you think it's sufficient, or should we, especially long-term, be considering having additional part-time or trying to have a dedicated full-time staffer for that role?
So obviously, you could look at the call log, call volume wise, obviously, your winter time and your colder months are quieter. As soon as April comes, those calls and those phone calls and the outside activities start and it just increases. So beneficial factor, we get a huge bang for our buck and we're on Barkley, you know, we unfortunately lost Tina, which was a huge loss to the community. But, you know, Anthony's doing a great job. Sam does her best, but Sam's also got a family and life and she's filling in the Fridays, Saturdays. It gets old after a while doing the whole time. So, you know, obviously having a full timer and then having a couple part timers or, you know, callbacks would be great, but it's a budgeting thing, you know what I'm saying? So I gotta pick and choose as I move forward, but they do a lot of stuff after hours on their own time with Facebook and advertising or making phone calls. So we're very fortunate to have two dedicated people. I'm blessed by it.
No, that's great. Thank you. And that's it for me for now. So
I don't think I got my question answered on the overtime, but you said that it's for sick time and all that, but once we just added a new head count, wouldn't we expect to see overtime go down?
No, because you have mandatory training, callbacks and the rest of it. So you also have to cover, we're catching up with that line item. So that's one of the line items that I try to put in the best numbers, but obviously, you know, finance does the union rate, you know, the projection for the payroll and the salary and stuff. So that's one of the items where COVID still is hitting us, other activities are hitting us, and we've had a lot of staff out for the 4 days, 5 days, or injuries and et cetera. So it's been an ever challenging shift for us to try to fill shifts, especially with we lost a lot of part timers. I got like really no list anymore. So Rob does the best he can with Dennis trying to fill the shifts, but he struggled today, and I think he hasn't gone home. He stayed home because we were short 3 guys, right? Right. I gotta, you know, and we haven't come up with a union policy to say direct callbacks or mandatory holdovers. But I think down the road, that might be coming for discussion, probably next contract and different things, right, Rob?
So I think that's just my concern is like the overtime from 2020 to now is almost double. And I'm just concerned on how much mutual aid might be doing that and, you know, what we're paying for here. And the only,
So the thing when you say mutual aid, it's not all driven towards that factor. I'm sorry to.
No,
I apologize, but your local hospitals, our travel times now, my ambulance goes to Hartford Hospital and is not returning back to 45 minutes. So I'm losing an ambulance for almost 2 hours in a normal call. If it's at 1:30 that crew took that ambulance, that's 2 hours, 3 hours of overtime. That's happening constantly. That ambulance ain't coming back. And believe me, we do our best job to say, hey, you're getting off at 2, don't go. But when I do that and I run 2 ambulances, that's leaving 2 bodies in this community during the daytime. So we do our best, but the turnaround times and the call times are just, look at our numbers. And that's what's driving it. So it's not a lot of mutual aid stuff, but yet, you know, it could be a mutual aid that they went, but the next thing you know, when that ambulance is in Hartford, Vernon's coming to take the next call. So
that's what I want to see.
try to balance that, you know, try to balance those numbers of, okay, that's great, Vernon's coming back in, but then you're losing that revenue.
Mhm.
So it's a balancing act.
And then the only other one is temporary help in fire suppression. What is that? I feel like I've asked you that question before.
So we only have it in the fire suppression. I don't have the temporary help in the ambulance, so it's a larger number, obviously. Otherwise, it would be split the same as the ambulance and fire. So the temporary help covers both of those categories, ambulance and fire for staffing.
Ambulance and fire
Correct.
for staffing.
So that fills in when a full timer is out.
But what is that though? Like who are we?
A part timer, Robbie, want to explain it?
It's per diem. So we have a list of 4, I think it's 4,
3 now.
3 now, 3 now.
We try to fill with the fire, putting in 2 first.
Right.
And we can't fill with an EMT. So then the shift is covered, you're not, I mean, we're not running in FPA standards like a lot of communities that we should have 4 people in an engine. Or in a ladder truck, we're minimal staffing, but we have part-time per diems because the ambulances are the bread and butters, and that's the units running, if that makes sense.
All right, so
At
they're
best, we
ambulance and
always-
fire.
At best, we always have the,
Okay,
at best,
yeah,
at worst, I mean, not having fire though.
all right, that makes sense. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Open the floor to other questions. I know I have one other, but I'm gonna make sure we get everyone a chance to ask.
Actually, no, I have a question.
And then just comments. Okay, everybody has asked the same questions and obviously have great questions again. You guys all know how much I support your department and all the hard work. And it really doesn't have to do with the budget numbers, but I think that personally, and our family, I'm sure the council too, appreciate everything you guys are doing, and then it's sad to hear that you don't have enough help. But honestly, I think I would probably not even realize that unless you tell me, because you still keep up with what you're doing, so. Thank you two guys and the department that got mine.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman. Good check, Councilman Ray.
I sort of went through division by division here. So the first one was for fire suppression. This is a $3,700 increase from the previous year. My other questions there got answered, but is this budget sufficient for the fire suppression department to meet goals and objectives for fiscal year 24?
We'll do the best of what you're giving us, but you gotta let me know what level of service that you want me to provide.
Yeah, that I hated her. That's another one I don't honestly hear or something like that last night in the library department, and that makes me a little nervous that public safety doesn't think that, you know, they're trying on water. No pun intended. But yeah.
So then I jumped to ambulance services. What's driving the communication cost increase here?
Give me one. Thing about what you pulled out of the order. So we've tried to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So we've tried to take some of the different items and shuffle around, but obviously I think the big kicker you're looking at is, probably the 911, overall. I think that's their biggest price driver in that budget. So that's the 911 dispatching services that's split up between fire, ambulance and, police. So that's a price driver that, you're gonna see probably not stabilized until after, next year, it shouldn't go up anymore. And I think by the third year will be finalized, but they're trying to go to a, obviously, call ratio system. So it's about a $12,000 increase overall from last year's communications 911. The last couple of years, it's been pretty, stable. But they've also seen price driving increases from software, fuel, energy, et cetera, et cetera. So they're passing obviously the cost on to the users, if that makes sense. So the only thing we're fortunate is the ACO line item there. We have that in there as well. That's I think it was a $9,000 line item, but that's the same basic of dispatching services for ACO wise. And that, at least they promised me they did not touch that. That stayed the same as last year. So before, how that gets assessment is, it used to be done by census population.
Yeah.
And they're flip flopping. So this year here is by the call ratio, next year it'll be by the census population, and then by the third year it'll be flat line. Make sense?
Remember last night this popped up with Trooper Eklund, and John has the documents. I can get that to you guys from TN with their different with their change.
And I did get a phone call today because I was looking into it as well. I finally got a phone call back from their operating budget came out. I think it was, I gave it to Brian at the middle of January, the end of January. And I did express that obviously on the town's behalf, and many towns, that it's a huge jump in 1 year. So unfortunately, all I can do is our hands are tied with that. Not a lot of services that provide that.
Thank you. I'm still under ambulance services.
Yep.
The service contracts. It was less than $500 in fiscal year 20. And has gone up to almost $3,000 for fiscal year 24. What's going on there?
Under the service contract?
Yeah.
You gotta help me, because I don't have that big, huge 268 page document that I got there. So I'm looking at last year's budget. This year, the only thing I threw in, that was a new added cost this year, is the EnviroShed, paper spreading, $20, 3 times $60. So last year, I think it was.
Yeah.
What did I have in last year, 29.
Got it. But what else is included under service contracts?
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, you have the right thing.
Annual maintenance of the washer and dryer at Station 140. So we did get a couple years ago another wash machine that was purchased from a grant corporation wise. But we service those once a year, so the washers and the dryer, that does all our fire gear, so we don't send it out. So that cost is about $200 and something. And then the big price driver that added the last couple of years was servicing for our stretchers. So with all the new stretchers that have come out now, they all have batteries, they're all electronic. So I have to have a company come in once, twice a year for adjustments, going through it. Not certifying it, but it pushes the value of the life, because the stretchers have gone up from $7,000 to now the new stretcher is $27,000. So we try to push our stretchers about 10 years. If that makes sense?
Yeah. I'm on ambulance services still. There was a reduction on the training and development line. I'm wondering what's the impact of this reduction?
So this year is 9,000, last year was 12,148. I dropped a couple people out of going to conferences. A lot of people aren't going to conferences anymore. They're doing them online. And there was something else that I cut. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay, so you're trying to mitigate the impact there. That was my internal interpretation.
I think I took out two, 1 or 2 people for the EMS training. So, because I'm hoping to go in-house wise. So right now we end up sending somebody else about $1,500. So I dropped the body out of that, so it's about $1,400. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So hopefully our plan's gonna work. And obviously it's, Captain Horn, but he demoted his own self to be our instructor here, which is great, but he's also doing the volunteer stuff. If that makes sense.
Yep, got it. What about computer software that's gone up a bit? What's going on there?
John, is that the firewall?
Lisa, you are right on top of my budget. I can. Yeah, unfortunately, station 340 and 440 have to have, I'm sorry, can I answer Lisa?
Yes, go for it. At
So-
least Lisa muted herself, so you're good to go.
Station 340 and 440 are obviously not on our fiber from the community. So they're outlying stations, so we have to have firewall set up at those 2 stations for the tie into our security for obviously the emails and the servers and stuff like that.
So that's new.
That is a new one. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's $465 for 2 of them. It comes about $930.
Got it. Thank you. And then I'm still on ambulance. The fuel and oil costs here, percentage wise, is much higher than we're seeing in other departments. I understand fuel and oil is more expensive, but this is what? quite a bit higher, than other departments. Okay.
Don had proposed, as you can see, yep, more, and then we knocked it back down, based on, and again, so when we did this, it was, probably a month ago.
Yeah.
Or maybe two, looking at the price, and so we settled at 18, on percentage. John, anything else?
No, but it's just one of those price drivers, like, you know, the call volumes, calls are going up. I think I'm already at 64, 60, almost 70% already since the last budget printout for where I am right now.
Okay,
So trying to forecast, but
this is impacting increased call volume.
mainly, yeah.
Okay,
But the biggest problem is obviously, you know, we try to take the numbers from the town and we try to forecast the whole overall thing.
yeah,
Really, it's one of the things where I feel comfortable having where we put the numbers in, and I would have felt more comfortable having the higher aspect, because if that ends up becoming short, I have to make up the shortfall in my budget to cover that category. So that would, you know, that's where we play catch up from year to year.
got it. Okay, thank you. Then I went to fire prevention. Try to do an order of the presentation.
No, it's fine, you're fine.
We talked about communication, the other services and fees. I know it's not a lot of money, but it percentage wise, it's a jump.
The 400,
Yeah. And it's,
that might be a Rob, is that you? It's gonna be the fire marshal to be good.
What we included there.
Huh?
Is that the thing for the schools and so on?
No, it's other services and fees.
So the other service and fees, I bumped that up because obviously, the maintenance costs and everything else are going up, price driving. So that item is the annual maintenance of vehicle, repairs. I can tell you the labor costs and the parts costs have just gone through the roof. And if his car comes up shortfall, hopefully Lisa's still muted. I cover the shortfall out of my fire budget of the, you know what I'm saying? Because I mean, I only have so much money that's in that category to cover that
sure,
vehicle.
right? What about books and subscriptions? Again, it's not a lot, but it's gone up substantially over the last several years.
What happens is every few years, we get a new code. We
Okay,
get a new code
Yeah.
sector, I guess I'll call it. And we did get that. So now instead of using one book, we have a flurry of books. It's the same thing with the building. We use the IBC, the IFC, the NFPA 1, you know, all of these documents and try to make them into one cohesive, understandable code. Not easy.
Yeah.
But that's where
okay,
that costs money, it's expensive.
sure. And the other equipment line has gone up a bunch too. Well, that one kind of over the years.
So my camera that I currently use, and I use all the time, is probably 6 years old, 7 years old now. And would really like to have a backup, at least take out one falls in half. So that was an $800 item.
Got it.
That was discussed.
Significantly.
That's it.
And so for fire prevention, is this sufficient? This budget sufficient for the department to meet goals and objectives for fiscal year 23-24?
Absolutely. I'll do my very best to get there.
Awesome.
Councilor Maria, if I jump in really quick to ask
Yeah, please.
Rob a follow-up question. So I think we're about, let's say, like 3.5 years into that mutual aid agreement with this Ellington, Vernon, I think
Yep.
South Windsor.
Yep.
How has that been going overall? Do you find it beneficial and that they've kind of
Very-
helped bring
very
support to you?
I have no back, nothing other than
Yeah.
that. So when I go on vacation, if I ever go on vacation.
You don't do those things.
I think I was.
Listen, he has to leave at some point. He sleeps, you know, just leave, he can't find.
Yeah, I guess you could. But anyway, yes, working very
Get a
well,
tracker.
particularly with Ellington and South and Vernon, I'm sorry. So I've covered them a few times and they have covered.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, once in a while, when we see this data, I do find it a little troubling that we're the only town that doesn't have a deputy chief or not even a per diem in terms of
I
staffing.
find that very troubling myself.
So I guess to go back to Councilor Murray's commentary and your response to it, I'm appreciative, but I hope we can consider in the long term, maybe giving you more, more support staff to help offset the amount that you do. I'm appreciative that the mutual aid is beneficial. All right, thank you, Councilor Murray.
Yeah, I have to say during the Birch Grove build. I know you put a lot of time into that, so it was great to know that there was backup, just in case.
Yep.
Thank you for all those efforts.
You can tell us the question.
So I appreciate you making that comment. If I can speak to that same comment. So a couple of years ago, we tried to perform a succession planning, to try to send the public safety officers to the fire marshal school, get the training so that they could provide as a fire inspector or deputy wise. So down the road, the succession planning is if a public safety officer would end up not passing his physical or moving, they could end up looking at that office to a transfer to keep the succession planning, because the knowledge and the wealth that the fire marshal has obviously is not just easy to pick up, walk to the office and pick up the files, but it'd be great to have that continuing succession planning as we move forward, plus the free mentoring. So the deputies and the aides during the daytime would just cycle. So that would be a plan. It was not, obviously, with the economic times, a discussion to come up, trying to educate Brian from a police background to a fire background.
No, I appreciate that.
Oh my God.
There's a bus, there's actually a fire truck, are you feeling underneath it? Beware when you hear those sirens.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go on to animal control. There's a communication cost reduction here. Does that impact the services provided by animal control?
No, so we basically took the iPads, similar way, so we always had them future planning wise, because my ATOs went to the, we're in the body cameras. And we were first originally told that we'd have to have those iPads for also for the vehicle, because they're under that law enforcement statute wide. So we ended up removing the iPads back, from them. Down the road, it might come back as a software and a item, as we move forth with more electronic and less hard books and papers in the vehicle.
Okay. What's covered under other services and fees? For animal control?
The other services and fees that I have is annual software to split cost between my office and the town clerk's office for the dog licensing.
Oh, okay.
So that's a tied in, $850, and then, annual dues and membership, have $100. The total $950, I believe you have there.
Yes, yes, that is. So machinery and equipment and food, clothing,
So machine equipment parts, basically, miscellaneous parts and equipment for the ACO vehicle. Obviously increasing with labor cost and everything else wise, when I have to go in for an oil change or parts and items like that.
got it. But they were $0 in fiscal year 2021, 22.
I can speak to that if you'd like.
I'd like, go for it, Lisa.
Okay, you're gonna see 0 expenses and then at the top line, it says transfer out. You see that at the top for 2021, 22?
Yeah.
What happens is we put the budget together so you can see by the line item here. What the budget will be for those items. And then because we have other reporting requirements to the state for the animal dog control, dog fund reporting, all the expenditures are run through the dog fund. So the money is transferred to that fund and then paid for out of each line item there in order to put the report. You still have to fund it, but we have to account for it separately because there's other stuff that goes into that fund from the town clerk's office that's not part of your general fund budget. And so that it's all transferred out. So you're gonna see zeros here. But what we do is we make sure we look at that fund each year to make sure what he's putting in the budget is sufficient or not. And I could probably get a printout of like a multi-year printout to show you what the expenditures are, but they also include the expenses that the town clerk has as well for, you know, the dog licensing and everything else that goes with it, the adoptions and things like that.
Okay,
So
thank
that's why
you.
you're not gonna see a trend.
Got it. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then for animal control, is the proposed budget sufficient for the department to meet goals and objectives for fiscal year 24?
We got two of the best staff, we can provide better service or more service if you'd like it.
So is that a yes?
We're gonna make do with what we have.
Okay. Thank you. We didn't get to CERT or water supply or emergency preparedness, right?
No, you're gonna jump
Okay,
in there.
got it. Thank you.
Well, I mean, that encompasses the whole presentation for public safety, but if you have any questions,
Do
certainly.
you want to hit anything on water supply while we're there?
Just is the budget gonna meet the department goals and objectives?
That is a Connecticut water formula, that we don't have much, saying in it, if any. Is that accurate, John?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, they send it out later in January and fiscal year wise, and the percentage, I think was 10, like, we average a percentage of it, but they fluctuate their percentage rate.
And there's a, you know, John has a slide there on how
Yeah.
the water's,
Yep. Excellent.
we're not paying by the gallon. It's kind of thing.
What about for emergency preparedness? Is that budget sufficient to meet the program objectives? You took away $87.
Yeah.
That's good? You're good?
Yeah, John took it away himself, actually.
Yeah, okay.
He did.
Insert. You're good with just the cert.
Yeah, I
budget's
think
good enough?
that, good, somebody had a question, communications or something else wise, so keep in mind, we ended up building that radio system. The year before, when we added the radio box and the ham operators.
Yeah.
We have really extended that whole program. Now, obviously, I gotta replace batteries down the road and some maintenance stuff, so that's where the next driver was for that increase in communication.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep. And this budget's going to be sufficient for cert?
Yeah, I mean, we were supposed to run a class, but for right now to get through the, the following year, yeah.
Thank you.
That's the other questions from council members.
Under general government?
Yeah, I think we'll go over on the general government. Thank you, Kelly, Rob,
Thank you.
Chief Lytle. If we have any more questions, we'll certainly reach out.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move into the town manager budget if everyone's ready. Total budget is $332,811. It's an increase of $10,286 overall. Primarily due to the a new account computer software being put into this budget book for $8,500 for the ClearGov. And then training and development was increased by $1,500 for the training of the new grants manager, which I'm trying to send her to, and she embraces anything I can get her to, and she's doing great. Not all, very few are actually being paid. They are there. $200 and $300 here and there.
So this is a point of clarification. Where did the $8,500 transfer from? In terms of, like, I assume we've had ClearGov for several years.
See, that's my question.
That's-
I can answer that.
Thank you.
Go for it, Lisa.
In the past couple of years, I wheel and deal and do what I can. I had negotiated in the beginning like a trial process that got me the first year, pretty much I didn't have to pay for it. And because of how I did the trial process, and then got the first payment, I had used some contingency funds that we had to be able to move into the next year for that. So that paid for it. Now it's finally coming into the budget online for the payment going forward. So because the budget is prepared through, well, because it's the manager's budget, the most appropriate place for it to be is under his budget because it's his proposed budget. So that's why it's showing up there. So in the past, I've used, various savings that I was able to scrape up in the year-end process to be able to pay for it. Like I said, I pretty much got like a year and a half free, if I remember correctly. I think we're out now on our work. Will be our third book.
Yeah. And then the other question I had for training and development, obviously you answered part of that, Brian. I'm glad you're encouraging Megan to jump on that. Where does the remainder 3,000 kind of go towards? Is it for training and development for you as a manager in terms of that level of professional development? Is it for the executive assistants or?
Sure.
combo?
If you want, I'm training Sarah Beth in Succeed, just in case something were ever to happen to Mike. Let's hope it doesn't, but if it did, I've started up training her on HR. I think she's already a few different classes she's taken and embracing it. Mike, do you want to add any training?
Well, that's also where the ICMA costs if you go to the conference.
Yep.
Okay.
Depends on where it is. It could be in Boston or Seattle, so it really depends on where they have it each year.
Okay. All right, that's it for me. And I think that I stole your question, Councilman Nuccio. Let's give another one. All right, Councilman Ray.
Me too, that was my question. Is this budget sufficient for the department to meet its goals and objectives for fiscal year 24?
Absolutely.
Good. Somehow Brian will manage.
I'm fine. I'm not asking for anything. All right, moving on. Our budget, town council, $36,873, a big decrease of 1% from the prior year. Nice job. Any questions?
Councilman Ray.
What's in the professional services line?
Clerk services.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Clerks used to be videographer. We don't have a videographer anymore, so it's just the clerks.
Okay. We talked about reducing costs for paper printing, and it keeps getting mentioned in different departments, so where is the printing for council related items, this $3,300, or is it really sporadically everywhere?
Lisa, is this the actual budget book?
That is the actual adopted budget book, plus it includes the annual report that you're statutorily required to print. And there was something else, the explanatory text for the budget referendum, and if you have any sort of bond referendum, that's where that would be paid for out of as well.
We included that too. Would it also include, we usually have to publish and be placed like in the library and other parts of the town hall, like our committee agendas or meeting packets and those sorts of reports? Or is that on a different budget line item?
We print those in-house.
Yeah, those are done in-house.
Okay.
Okay. And so the advertising is for like public hearings, and this is newspaper advertising?
Yes, I believe that
Yes.
required by the requirement.
It's referendums.
Yeah.
And public hearings.
Okay.
I spent $5,120 in fiscal year 22.
Okay, and we're on pace to do that again this year.
Pretty much, yeah, I think in December, when I did the budget, it was like 35, I think.
Alright.
$1,000.
What's included with dues and memberships?
CCM, which is about 8,100 ROG and cost. It's the dues for those three organizations.
It's the dues for our town to participate in those, or for us as counselors to be. part
No,
of.
it's for the town to be members of CCM and CROG, so, you know,
Okay,
it's the town's cost.
all right. What about training and development?
Well, I think there's $100 in here. I think that's just if there's any miscellaneous training that needs to be done or anything.
Yeah, I don't know if it's voluntary or not voluntary, complimentary or not, but usually every year after, or every election year, there's FOIA training usually for all the elected boards. I don't know if this would encompass that.
That's free, that doesn't cost us anything. If there was something that you needed to get paid for, we charge it up to $100 here. So I don't know how much training that'll get you, but
Okay, looks like $162 in fiscal year 22. So what about office supplies?
brains.
Proclamation.
Brains,
Yeah,
okay,
brains,
Hey.
a mouse pad.
and program materials?
Council food. Last year, like in September of last year, you got some food. I can't remember what we did, but
Like for the manager interviews.
maybe that.
All of us.
Colleen was running.
And there's a memorial wreath we did last year. I don't even know what that was for, but that was what we did last year.
So is this enough to meet our program goals and objectives?
Let me ask you, is it, no, I think it should, it's on par with what you had in the past, so I think it should, yes.
Okay.
I think if your question is a yes or no, so I'm gonna say
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
All right, one thing I'll add is, for the record, Lisa does a phenomenal job on the minutes, even though it probably helps fill up Kathy's office very quickly with how thorough she is, but we appreciate her services.
Fantastic, but I must, I'm sorry if I missed it, on the tribe, training and development was 4,500, what's the training and development again? Cause I've never.
Well, that's for his budget.
That's what I'm.
Oh.
Yeah, for council 100.
Oh, okay, I was like, I've never gotten any training, that's what that.
Yeah, no, that,
Besides the free 4-year training. But, okay.
Good job.
Yeah.
I'm getting it right now.
All right,
All right, but I'd like to move on then to the economic development, EDC.
All right.
Oh, Katie, I'm sorry. Tammy, you raised your hand.
Question.
Hit me. Oh,
Economic development.
go ahead.
There's the reduction of the $2,000 in the professional services. Is that for town thing, Bobby, that we did that really, in my opinion, has not netted us anything?
yeah, that's,
It's going to work out to that. Yes, I had other reasons, but then, when I first did this. Just on actuals and what had been going on, but now it's merged into, let's just leave it and get out.
Yeah.
That's what we're considering.
Okay, so what's the 3,000 that is left then?
Like this year, they're hiring a consultant at 5,000, I believe, around, is that what I think they had to spend, yeah. And they are doing the consultant's gonna do an economic impact study on the impact of low-income housing to businesses.
Right, well. Right there, yeah, okay, I'm good, that's it.
Any other questions? Councilman Ray?
What are the dues and memberships for?
Yeah.
nothing.
Nothing.
They haven't spent anything in dues and memberships and
Hold on.
again, this would be a good conversation when. David, when he comes up, but they rarely, I mean, they don't spend their budget, I mean. we
It
try
was
to-
just that consultant that they did.
What's that?
There was just that consultant for the $5,000 for the 4-town.
Yeah.
Bobby.
Yeah, they haven't hit this since 2017.
Okay.
So,
But in the past, they had been a part of CEDAS and what that is, but that's certainly open for discussion.
Okay, and then under accomplishments, it says that they developed an online map of vacant commercial and industrial property. Is that on our GIS mapping site?
I believe it is, and up to date.
Should be under the economic development site. That was something that I had worked with them on last year.
Okay. And what about the new inventory mapping of available commercial properties?
That's
Is-
the one, I'm sorry.
That's the one. So then, do we know anything about this online map of vacant commercial and industrial property?
No, when Dave comes in, yes.
Okay, and can we find this survey of businesses in Tolland? Is there a report with that or?
Did you ask where is the online map of vacant commercial?
Yeah.
In the district? That is in the EDC section of the website, and I can send you a link if you want.
Okay.
It's also under planning and zoning. Yeah.
Okay, and then the survey of businesses?
They haven't completed it. The survey's done. EDC hasn't completed the report yet.
Oh. All right. So is this budget sufficient for the department to meet goals and objectives for fiscal year 24?
I believe so, and I will look at the dues and membership.
Thanks.
All right, seeing no other questions, move on.
Which is great.
Mike's turn.
There would be. Mike's turn, as you just said. Thank you. Go ahead, Mike, if you want to hit it.
Yeah, so HR administrations, that's basically my budget and part of one of the support person's budget. That's up slightly 2%. The health benefits, that's where all of our benefits are put in, so we've talked about most of that increase already, which is partly the 16.42%. There's other things in there like life insurance and and pension and things like that. Townwide insurance, that's all of our insurances, our lab, other things, that's up 5% right now, about $12,000. Keep going, volunteer fire insurance, that's the insurance we have, we pay for the corporation. It's up slightly, based on the renewal. What else we got here? Yeah, I mean, I can stop there, because we're gonna legal after that, but.
More questions?
Sure. So under HR administration, I did just want to say that you forgot to mention that your integral role in hiring a new town manager.
That's right, I wrote good point next to mine.
Thank you for that. Is that budget sufficient for the department to meet goals and objectives for fiscal year 24?
Yes.
Awesome. So health insurance. I have questions. So in here, in the book, it says the health insurance increase is 11.9%. We keep hearing 16.42.
So yeah, so part of the health insurance is the Teamster union plan. So that's a separate plan and that's a separate rate increase each year it's in the contract. You know,
So this includes Teamster plus.
yeah,
the
so it's
remainder.
and also, it also includes any census changes during the year, so. You know, someone left and they were family and we hired someone that's single, so there's some back and forth with that, so. You throw that all together, it's overall, it's 11.9. Obviously, the biggest chunk is this that we talk about is the 16.42, because that's. You know, the bigger part of it.
Sure. How long have we been doing self-insurance?
Since 2010, I want to say, or 2010 maybe, or 11. All put together after a while.
Could the town be self-insured without the Board of Ed?
No, yeah, we have to, we're so small that we couldn't, I mean, the whole idea of pooling. The larger, the better.
Has the town side ever run a deficit compared to the Board of Ed?
Oh, yeah, we generally run a deficit compared to the Board of Ed, sure, yeah, because it's just,
What's the,
I don't know what it is on it each year, but I mean, it's,
can we find out?
oh, yeah, we can find out, I can go back and look at each year.
Yeah.
What we run, but again, it's. We don't really, I mean, we don't look at it on an individual basis. Because we're pooled together, so, but we have a separate bank account, because things hit our bank account opposed to theirs, so we know where their claims are, it's ours, but, you know, but. We couldn't, it goes back to, we couldn't be pooled because, or we couldn't be on our own because we're too small, you know, just 1 month of. You know, if we had 2 people that had cancer treatments and there was $150,000 of claims. That would eat through everything we paid that whole month, so, you know, but. On an overall basis with the Board of Ed, you know, we were it's able to work.
Okay, yeah, I think it would be really helpful to know how much the Board of Ed's contributions to insurance has covered the town over the years, especially in a year where the expenses on the Board of Ed side is a considerable increase for their operating budget. Could you ballpark the total savings we estimate achieving using self-insurance since we started this program?
Well, it's funny you asked that, because I think we were at a meeting today and I thought Suzanne said that. If we had went fully insured this year, we'd have to pay $2 million more.
That's just this year.
That's just 1 year, so, you know, if you extrapolate that out, you know, maybe back when we started, it might have been $1 million. I mean, I know when we started, I want to say we saved anywhere from 750 to like $1 million over the year, so it's a lot of money, so. But you have to obviously look at, you know. We'd have a fully insured number, and then we'd have a fully insured rate increase, and then we're comparing it to what our rate increase is. And again, because we're self-insured, we have more flexibility to. Deal with it, you know, when you're fully insured, you just get a number and then you try to argue it down, and that doesn't happen very often, so. But it's a lot of money, so I guess. I heard $2 million, so that's a good number.
Just this year.
But just on a year, say we. Closed each year, you know, we probably have to pay $2 million more, that's what Suzanne said, so I have no reason to. Not believe what she said.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very much interested in the town deficit and how much the Board of Ed has covered the town over the years. Going on to unemployment compensation, how come that's down so much? Not arguing, just.
Yeah, no, we use a 7-year rolling average, and there's just not, I mean, we're, you know, the country's kind of fully employed, so we don't have a lot of unemployment. So but we do a 7-year rolling average just to make sure, because you never know what's gonna happen. But, so that's why it's gone down, it's just.
And why is life insurance up so much?
The rate renewal is higher. Unfortunately, the Board of Ed has some policies that are older that are fully life policies, so they don't end, like they don't end at a certain age, they end when someone passes away, so there's always claims. So, I think that's probably why we've had a bigger increase than we want normally. It's just because of those older, I don't know, they're probably pretty old, but they're still part of the package, so it costs, we haven't had a claim in a while, but I know the Board of Ed has several each year, but.
Okay, what are post-employment benefits?
So I'll say that, Lisa can also chime in, so that's like an actuarial analysis of what we would have to pay or put in when people retire, and we have to pay post-employment benefits, we don't have much. So it has gone up, but it's something that's calculated for us by our advisor, and we budget. So, you know, normally for a normal town, or it might be post-employment, you know, health insurance and things like that. The only thing we have for the non-union, we have a partial plan when it's only for 5 years after if you work 20 years and things. So that's mainly what it is for us. It's a very small number. Compared to, you know, if you have a larger post-employment plan for employees.
And then why have employee pensions gone down?
I'm gonna throw that to Lisa. I mean, it's calculated all on salary, so, but I'm not sure.
We factored in a little bit of attrition there. And a little bit of, yeah, no, but that was just total factoring a little bit of attrition to try to reduce the cost going forward. It was, what happened was when an employee resigns before 5 years, they're not vested in the pension plan. And the funds that the town puts in for them, the employee will get their share back, but the funds that the town puts in for them gets returned to the town. So if we have a little bit of attrition there, what we'll do is take and use some of that balance to offset the budget since we got the money back.
Okay. So is this proposed budget sufficient for the department to meet goals and objectives for fiscal year 24?
Yes,
And townwide insurance? What is insurance public official?
so that's crime insurance for officials, and so if someone did a bad thing, you know, that's coverage for employees and public officials.
Awesome.
And bonds also, it also has bonds for the people who handle cash, like the revenue collection.
Okay. Don't do bad things. Got it. Is this budget sufficient to meet program objectives and goals for fiscal year 24?
Yes,
What about for firefighter insurance? Is that sufficient to meet goals and objectives for 24?
yep.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
So that's really bad things. Any other questions? All right, that brings us to I think legal services.
Yes, sir.
So, Rick.
Correct. Flat and flat, for Attorney Conti. Any questions?
What's the 6,000?
Lisa? 6,000 on legal services, you know what that is?
Yes, that is for our bond counsel. There are certain different, sometimes the question for bond counsel comes up that is not included in an issuance that we need to pay him for. There's certain referendum preparation process for bond issuance that he's involved with. The other big bond sales are done through the issue itself, but that's the amount that we usually pay for other services.
Any other questions? Councilman
I'm worried that this legal budget might not be enough for fiscal year 23-24, especially with the road salt task force. Is that a concern anyone else shares?
There's a few things that have come across our way, where outside attorneys have also been, needed. To the tune of 35,000, at this point, 34,000. It's a concern, Lisa, if there is an overage, how do you typically pay for it?
It all depends. I mean, this year we had that situation where we needed attorney fees. We had some savings in the police department. We were able to transfer some of those funds from the state trooper money to cover some of that. You know, we try to look to the budget for savings that might be available. If we don't have any savings, then we have to go back to town council for supplemental appropriation. That's usually my last resort.
I mean, it's hard, like, if you look at the budget, like, we have 1 year 17, it was $85,000 spent.
Yeah.
It's all issue based, so, you know, we have a year where there's just things hitting. But other years it might be 45, so it's just really hard to, you know, but it's it's hard to peg what number we should put in there, because it's all issue based with something we don't even know what's gonna happen.
Okay. How many? Labor contracts do we have coming up for fiscal year 24?
Well, we'll be starting the firefighter at the end of this fiscal year, but it won't finish this year, so just the firefighters is the one. That'll flow into next year.
So, this is flat. We dealt with 2, right? We've got 2 going, or we had 2 in this current fiscal year.
They started last year. They are continuing, well, we got the CSEA done earlier this year. And the teams are still going, but we're not actively meeting anymore. It's not, we're just kind of. So it's not like we're spending a lot of money on meetings with that, so.
I'm just wondering, because we only have 1 labor agreement for the next fiscal year, do we need to allocate this much money? Considering the current fiscal year dealt with 2 and the projection is for next fiscal year to deal with 1.
Again, it's similar. There's a lot of other issues we could have. I mean, we could have an arbitration, we could have some really bad grievances, things like that. So it's also issue based. So again, same thing. We have a high of 45, a low of 1 year we only spent $9,000. So it really depends on how things hit. So I think this budget, we just try to get a number that we feel comfortable that whatever we have going contract wise, plus what we think, which usually happens each year, we usually have 1 or 2 things come up that are labor related that cost something, so.
So you think this number is sufficient?
I think it's good, yeah, I mean. I
Great.
think it's good.
All right. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, that brings us to probate services.
Okay, due to a change in schedule today for myself, I was unable to meet with the probate judge. I did meet with them, a couple months ago. Their total budget's $15,234, a change of, $28 in service contracts, and I'm hoping Lisa can remember, what that is, because I don't have it off the top of my head.
I think it was for their digital, fees for making digital copies of some of their records. I think that's part of it. Or some sort of service contract related to that. I can't remember exactly what it is, but, this particular budget as well, we bill out to the other communities. So, and it's all based on the grand list values. So each town pays a share of this budget. It's recorded in the revenue account for their share of these expenses. Plus, we also include an estimate for the, electricity, the custodian, building maintenance, square footage for like I said, water, electricity, what it costs for the building. So all that's factored into the rate that we bill out to the other communities that are shared with the probate court.
Any other questions?
This is enough for them to meet their program objectives and goals.
I'll get back to you with that as soon as I can. They seemed, I want to put it this way, they were confident that this was a 5-minute meeting 2 months ago. They certainly didn't ask for more.
Okay.
One good call with probate, Brian, trying to recall, did they have any damage from the lightning strike a while back, or was it only other parts of the town?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, I was probably recalling incorrectly, but I know there were a couple parts of it, there was like the parts of the library and a couple of sections that had some issues, but, okay.
No, nothing.
Psychological damage, but no money.
Yeah. All right, that brings us to registrar of voters.
You're right. I met with Mr. Wyman and Mr. Bach a couple times on this. It's pretty much down the middle, as you can see, 68,355, an increase of just under $2,000. I know had some commentary. They're just the absolute best, and we're so lucky to have them. And they're a jewel of our staff here and our town, and for a lot of reasons. So happy to try to take any questions.
A good question I just wanted to verify was the temporary help is probably in anticipation for next year for primaries and other elections that are going to be going on,
I don't think that was.
or for absentee ballot counting.
Correct. I don't think they know what that is yet.
Okay.
And they made that clear today. They have no idea what that is. I think they wanted to give them just a little bit more of a bump. Based on the work they did, if memory serves. Lisa, is that accurate?
Yes, are you talking about the temporary helpline?
Correct.
That's for the deputy registrars that they're trying to cross-train to, for the future.
They don't know what the impact will be, and they don't.
They're,
wanna
they're
have-
putting in more hours for that.
If there is an impact.
Okay.
Or it might be funded. By the state. Representative Nuccio can convince them to do that.
All right, any other questions?
Do you know if there is anything at all planned in here for the early voting?
No, there's not, and that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
No, they were very clear. We have no idea
Yeah,
where it could possibly go.
okay.
The 10 days ahead, 7 days, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't, well, we haven't finalized that legislative yet, and we're also, I'm trying to make sure that there's funding that's going to go to the towns, so
It would be weird that there was an unfunded mandate,
I have no idea what you mean. Like, that's just
Especially-
totally never gonna happen.
especially.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's the only question I have.
All right, thank you. Councilor
That was my question. I'm worried about the cost for early voting and does this cover us?
Our fingers crossed, Uncle Ned covers that.
There might have to be some collaboration with probably the town clerk's office too, similar to their.
You know, they don't expect impact in the town clerk's office. They're trying to cut the town clerks out of the early voting.
Okay. And for early absentee voting?
Yeah, It's not
Yeah,
early.
I mean, I understand.
It's absentee.
Yeah. Okay.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
That makes sense because they're open polling places. And that's not messed up in the first.
It's gonna be logistical fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
For sure, for them, a lot to figure out. Basically, we're gonna keep the poll open. For an
Yeah.
extended period of time, but they're well prepared. Whatever happens, they'll be well prepared.
okay,
or getting
agreed. All right.
Great.
Any
Just
other-
as long as you go and vote.
Yes, more is better. All right.
Only once.
Only once.
More presentation, I mean, not more voting, more presentation.
Someone
Yeah.
said that, right?
Yeah.
Early voting.
All right, I guess that concludes our presentation, so. There's no other discussion, questions, Councilman Nuccio?
There is, I did not see, the contingency account on here,
For
under finance.
Lisa, your contingency account under finance,
It's definitely in the budget book. I'm not sure, I don't think we have ever done it in a presentation, so it probably didn't show up in the past ones, but we can certainly talk about it. Let me get to the page in the budget book. Give me a moment. Oops, too far.
It is.
28298.
324,
I'm sorry.
What is it?
324.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a moment. I'm getting there.
No, that's.
Okay. The contingency budget consists of several different accounts. Originally, the manager had asked for an extra 10,000 to be put in there under the department request, but then there were some issues with, and that was for a $10,000 grant to offset a grant for the fire department. But right now, it does not appear that we will be getting that. So we reduced that request to 40,000 back to our average, budget for that. And this is well below what other towns put for contingency. They usually put a 10% or more of the budget as part of their policy to set aside for unanticipated expenses. The next line item is the personnel adjustment, the 151,550. That budget has decreased by a little over $60,000. That is for where we keep the non-affiliated raises, the non-affiliated personnel anticipated raises, which the manager has put in at 2%. And it also includes estimated increases for the unions that have not settled, which is the fire department at this point. And it also includes, I'm trying to remember because I don't have my detail with me.
At least it has the Teamsters in there too, because we haven't settled the Teamsters.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
It's got fire and Teamsters in there.
Okay, sorry about that, gang. So it includes that, and it includes a little bit in case we have attrition for someone who should resign, and we have to pay for final benefits when they resign, going at retirements, things like that, to pay for vacation and sick leave for whatever the budget can't cover. So those are the types of things in there. Then the rest of these, you have the town historian. There's been some years they have some payments, some years they don't. It depends on what they're having to advertise or need the funds for. This year we added the Veterans Recognition Commission came forth with a pretty substantial budget request. And last year when I was in the manager position, I worked with them to try to get them different services provided by the town, as well as some supplies and things like that. It wasn't in a budget, but it was where I could find savings throughout the town to get them what they needed to maybe start up their coffee shop and things, coffee hour, whatever, things like that. So this year, we talked about it to try to get them at least some seed money. And the manager put in $1,000 for that purpose to at least give them something to work with besides I know they're working on fundraising and things like that. The Permanent Celebration Commission, that's for like the Memorial Day Parade and the tree lighting and different events that they do in town. The town manager, he can speak to the increase there, as well as for the Historic District Commission. He also put an increase there. He can speak to those too if you have questions on those things. The Historic District Commission is mostly the 700 over the years, or whatever we've paid, 1,000. Mainly is for advertising that they've had to do, legal advertising. And then the prior year tax refunds, every year is different. You never know if you're going to be hit with a $40,000, $50,000 prior year bill or $1,000. It fluctuates from year to year. So we have the 15,000 in there as an average. Last year we were up towards almost 22,000, where I needed to find other money, such as contingency money or so forth, to help cover that. And that's what's in contingency. Oh, I know there's also a portion of a payroll under personnel adjustment that is included in there. I think it's like 12,000, 15,000. That includes because of how we have to do for generally accepted accounting principles, you have to split up payrolls a certain amount of 1 week in 1 year and 1 week in another year and all that. And sometimes the extra budget needs to be put in place to cover that. But we don't put it in everybody's budget. It's just there. And then it gets allocated once the final payroll is paid. Any questions?
Yep. Yep. So I know the contingency has been used, we have talked about a couple of times in the budget now that money gets put in there for anticipated increases, and some of these large increases we've seen in salary are because we've moved from contingency to the departments. I just want to say my favorite pages in this budget book are 120 to, I want to say it's, what is this, like 140, where it breaks down like everything and the expenditure by function and everything else. From payroll perspective, for non-board of ed, we had $244,473 in raises. So,
You know, hold on a minute, where are you?
I'm on page 125.
All right, because, if you're talking Board of Ed, there's.
No, I'm not talking board of ed. If I take
Oh,
out the
Oh,
total
oh,
payroll on 125 is an increase year over year of $244,473.
I don't see that, I'm sorry.
No, I just did the math. I just took.
Oh, I'm
total.
in the wrong, I'm on the wrong page, that doesn't help. 125, you said?
25, yeah, 125, top of the page. Total regular payroll,
I was on.
increasing by $244,473 for everything that's non-BOE.
Okay, I think that's what we put in our summary as well.
No, I didn't get to the summary part, but,
We're in the manager's budget letter, I think that was one of the, that sort of reminds me of a number that is in his letter.
okay, so we're only reducing the contingency by $60,000.
Yep.
And we're leaving almost $152,000 in there when we've only got the Teamsters and the fire department.
No,
Yes.
there's more in there, I explained what is in there. And I don't have the breakout. Trying to see if I have anything for that. Hold on. No, there's other payments that we're required to make, contractual payments that come out of that account. You have money in there for attrition, for payout of services.
How would we have money for attrition? Attrition is,
I'm sorry, not attrition. When for example, say if I left today,
So.
No.
pay
right.
audits.
or tomorrow maybe.
Sounds
Um,
minutes. When someone leaves, we
Yeah.
pay them out,
Right,
say
final
someone leaves,
benefits.
we pay out their vacation and their sick leave according to the contract or whatever, so we have to budget a certain amount, we're guessing who's gonna retire, so we put a certain amount, because that's the extra thing that we're paying out as one balloon payment when they leave.
And
there's some big ones.
yeah, and you also have the non-affiliated wages besides the two unions.
Equivalent to the time they have in the bank.
no, I understand.
Oh,
that,
yes,
Right, but okay, you can't accumulate unlimited.
right.
No,
Right.
we
So
own sick
if
leave.
somebody is
Oh, no.
leaving, somebody leaves in June, you still have half of the salary there, like.
If,
That's all you
Fair
can
enough.
hire somebody.
unless you get a temporary person or something like that, it all depends on the position and what sort of attrition savings you
Yeah.
might have. Also in that account is the non-affiliated raises. So you may have the two unions, but you also have all the other people who are not in unions. All those raises are included in there as well.
Yeah, but they're already in the budget.
No.
It's a budget, so
They're
right
not in
now,
the budget. Those non-affiliated are not in the budget. Their raises are set aside, which I talked about the 2% for this year. Their raises are set aside in this line item. So for example, if I get a raise, the manager gets a raise, Mike gets a raise, we're all non-affiliated. There's quite a few non-affiliated employees. Those salaries, the estimated 2% increase, if that's where it goes, is in that number. So you have three different, you might want to call it payroll groups within there.
And it goes in there because, he'll give me like a 0.5% and someone else get 2. So, because they don't know, he doesn't know what he's gonna give people now. That's why it's here.
well, we have raises built into this budget.
The only ones that are in the budget are the contracts that are settled. So the CSEA is the only one that's actually in the budget because we know it's gonna be what's in the contract. With the Teamsters, we haven't settled that. With the fire, we haven't settled that for next year, so we don't know what to put in. So the only thing that's actually in the budget are the CSEA wages. So, you know, that's where the ones where she talked about there was 2 years in there. So, but for unaffiliated, we always put it here because we don't know what the town manager is gonna give everyone. And then any contracts that haven't settled are going here, starting here, and then they get transferred once we settle the contract. So that's what she's trying to say.
I think what she said earlier was that the 22-23 salary increases are in the
Yes.
budget and the 23-24 are in contingency.
But we're showing
For the non-affiliated, you're right.
24, right? So I have not found a single line in here that does not have a payroll increase. And 23 adopted budget, or then 24 manager proposed budget, and a comparison between 23 and 24. Not a single,
Well, that's
I'm
because
confused what you're saying.
in the last year, right, Lisa?
I'm confused what she's asking.
She says every payroll has an increase,
Yeah,
but because it's the last year though, like for.
Right. so
last
for example, Tammy, if,
years, I'm getting
if you
confused.
look at, any department that has a department head in it, the department head is non-affiliated. So what that budget would include is their union negotiated wage increases if they have a settled contract. And it would also include only the amount from the 22-23. So what we got this year after the budget was processed and all that. Whatever we got, that number is now in the budget for the 22-23 raises, is now in the 23-24. But it wasn't there at the beginning of the year in 22-23 because it was in a different account.
so basically you're saying we're always a year behind. and
Right.
it's like,
Exactly. So it just keeps, it goes in one, it goes back to the other, then, it goes in one again, it goes back to the other. And you'll notice that, if you look at beginning and revised budget, let me see if that is in here. Oh, of course, I don't have that page open anymore. The budget gets moved rather than getting charged to that account directly. The funds are moved to the revised budget within each department as the funds are needed. And only the funds that are needed are moved. If they're not needed, then they stay there. And if there's anything left at the end of the year, it gets returned to fund balance or is used for certain fringe benefit costs, things like that, that we need to manage.
so I guess my whole thing here is I would have expected a larger reduction than $60,000 from the contingency for the raises that were paid out. And I'm gonna focus in just because, again, when we get the numbers for like the last 6 years, we're returning $200,000 to the general fund almost every year. There's money that is being returned every year to the general fund.
Not usually
Because-
from there.
Well, from the budget as a whole, if we want to pick like $20 here, $20 there, the number is always between, 1 something and 2 something, right? And contingency is a soft spot. It's always a soft spot in a budget.
In
So
what
that's
respect?
the $200,000 returned back to the fund, contingency is usually not linked, like, we're saying it's the possibility of raises, it's a
No, I
contingency.
mean, the contingency is usually, for the most part, and I let me see if I have it. It gets transferred out to the payroll accounts throughout the board, so it's hard to really see exactly what departments where it went and all that.
Well, an example is, Tammy, if somehow we had been able to settle the Teamster contract earlier, like we did with CSEA, there'd be another $40,000 to $50,000 out of there, so it would only be like.
Yes.
You know, so you might say, oh, that looks like a good number now, it's just we haven't got, we're still going back and forth, on the issues we talked about, so that's like an example, but those are two questions, I guess. How much do you get back, and then what's the contingency?
Right.
Yeah, but I understand your point.
Thank you. I didn't want to think I was going crazy. Although, there's people out there with good. All right, so I guess that's my only question on contingency. I think it's just the overall, focusing in.
Yeah, if you look, for example, on page 326, just for, well, this snapshot, the number may be less now.
It is literally right to the page. Didn't even, right?
What was that?
I literally just opened it for that page. Not
Perfect.
even-
All right, so if you look at the adopted budget for 23, there was 211,906 in the adopted budget. But if you look at the revised budget now, it's down to 129 in there.
We
And
don't-
Yeah, that's right next to it.
Before it.
It's the 80,000.
adopted.
Yeah.
yeah, I can't get the revised to show to the adopted as much as I'd like to. So it shows you that, the money gets moved out of there. You're not going to show it as expended unless you see that what you see as actual expenses would be for those particular attrition payouts, things like that, that get charged directly to that account. The rest of it, the rest of it gets the budget moved. So in the past few years, 1 year was attrition pay. I call it attrition payments. It's when you get buyouts for what you have to pay.
Right, so that went down by $82,252.
Where is that?
That's the difference between the revised and the adopted, $82,252.
At this snapshot, which I think was might have been November, December when that was done. So I'd have to look to see where it's at now, because not all the transfers are made until we get through part of the year, when we start cleaning up the accounts moving forward. We don't do it right away. We try to get through. If there's some attrition in a department, then we'll try to use up the attrition rather than moving money into that budget.
All right. It's just squishy. I'd like to understand it.
Oh, yeah, believe me, I don't know what else I could tell you or try to show you, but it's not like hiding money or anything like that. It's definitely for personnel related expenses, whether it be, like I said, there's other expenses in there as well, and I'm trying to think of what they're called. There's special agreements for Mike. I don't know if you can help me with there's certain people that get paid. It's a personnel policy. It's an old time personnel policy. Well, if you have over a certain amount of sick time pursuant to the personnel policy, you get paid for that.
Yeah, you can, but you only get paid out at $10 a day, so you can only go to
Yeah,
1,080.
but I mean, you have some of that in there for those people who, who exceed that. You have a little bit of there's another thing, and
Well, you got most of the large stuff, Lisa.
yeah, there's little things. I think there's some people from the library or something, and then there's some sort of old plan for people who with the pension years ago. There's very few people there involved in that. So I know there's like a couple little things. It's only 1,000 or 2,000 for those sort of things. It's not a lot of money.
All righty.
You opened a bit of a box going to that page though, so now I have potentially a question, more of a comment. I know I'm appreciative of the increase to the PCC. Obviously, Brian, you've been pushing for a lot more use on the green. And obviously, there's probably some relation, to perhaps your proposal for HDC, the Historic District Commission and, our long-term plans for ADA accessibility in the green, but I just, looking at that number and seeing 285% increase. And then only requesting 700, I think when Councilman Yudichak and Murray asked a few department heads and they feel like they're tight on their budgets. You know, this is an area, or even Barbara cutting themselves $1,200 against kind of, you could give them a significant increase and probably still not go to that full 2,700.
We've certainly identified some increases today and yesterday
Okay.
that we'll look to adjust that. However, or if you allow, you'd like, I'll explain both the PCC and the Historic District Commission. The PCC, they obviously run our green for us.
Yeah.
But there are expenses involved. They had asked, Councilperson Nuccio was the liaison, had asked for more for the events in the green, and then I hit him with the farmer's market. We have no tables, we have no tents, and that's gonna be every week throughout the summer. And it's scheduling, it's a lot of legwork. They'd like to advertise and do some things, some signage on the green for the farmer's market.
Yeah.
The Historic District Commission. That was with the ADA. My original intent was either each year they can do a plaque with that in front of us, each house along the way of the walkway. However, they have just reached out and asked for minutes. So to someone to do the minutes during their meetings. So there's gonna be some flow as how they want to do that. But I'm looking for their cooperation in some other matters as well.
Okay. No, I mean, I absolutely agree. PCC does great work. Yeah, the historic district was just, yeah, it's a significant, at least from a percentage basis increase, even if it's a smaller dollar amount, but.
Yep.
But no, I think that's just mostly like you're saying, if there's any way you can provide what their operations or goals with that much of an increase, I think it helps make a better sell as to why they're getting that much more in their budget than years past. And again, same with the VRC with PCC, I think for the veterans, I think are long overdue for a budget increase and having established funds to help to reach out to that community. So I'm glad that that's in there as well.
Yes, they asked for a lot more than that. But you know, we intend on in my conversations with several members is. This is a starting point.
Yeah.
You know, they're asking for 17 times that. But we're also looking to improve the veterans access on the green around the monument. That'll be coming out possibly out of the ARPA funding. So
I think there's improvements over at the park by Lions Field as well.
correct. And we're working with the Boy Scouts on the cedar.
Yeah, for the gazebo, for
Correct.
that space and making that ADA accessible.
Yep.
All right, that was it for me for just commentary and, yeah, no, if there's any way you could provide. The historic district knows what they're intending to use or what's proposed for that increase, that would be good to know, but otherwise, yeah, no, good with the rest.
Got it.
Any other questions or comments? Councilman Newcheck and then Councilman Murray.
So. With the great points, team, we have about $200,000 every year that seems to come back to the town. No, we're actually not really spending that, like we're telling taxpayers, right? I think that's what you're trying to say. That taboo with the Board of Ed too, so I think both sides are in similar boats and, in respect to pointing that out. Tammy, and my ears perked up when you just said you found other areas where you're finding areas that we could say better or move some things around. When will you share those items with us?
That'll be a conversation for Lisa and I when we adjust the budget, but it's not overly impacting. There's a couple $100 here last night with
$50,000.
with what?
The sweeper. $50,000.
Oh, I want to know who gave you that number.
I gave you the notes.
Barbara last night had the double, not Barbara. Bev had the double thing, so it's minor, but like you said, $1,200 to shift some stuff around. It's not like it's not gonna affect the overall number, I don't believe, especially if I'm gonna pull So she was 2,400 and a double. She showed something twice. We're gonna look into that.
Yeah.
I don't have my list from the other night, but the stuff we found a couple of things here, so we'll try to move it around.
Other comments, but it's just comments.
Okay,
That's okay.
yeah, no, of course. Councilman Murray?
Yeah, for Historic District Commission, the minutes has come up a number of times in their meetings. But they're doing all their meetings remotely via Zoom.
Yep.
And they record those.
Yep.
And also I noticed that we have like, closed captioning. I wonder if we could be a little creative here and, perhaps transcribe the minutes, the recording instead of paying for a clerk or using the closed captioning on the Zoom.
Yep.
Instead of paying for a clerk to do their minutes. I'm trying to like think of creative ideas for the Historic District Commission. I know that perhaps if none of those ideas work, having a recording clerk just when they're having public hearing issues.
Yep.
As opposed to other meetings where they don't have COA hearings. Again, just trying to, I understand and have heard from them that the minutes are a little bit intense. Robert's rules requires minutes to be very minimal. Really just for votes and who voted which way.
Yep.
So that I think there might be some flexibility there for the
Okay,
Historic District Commission and things that they might be willing to accept.
So in my conversations with the chair, the original, the plaque thing, obviously we've discussed.
Yeah.
I'm sure it hasn't come up, maybe it has.
Oh,
come
no,
up.
they like signs.
Okay, and then just when the minutes thing came up, that was me just thinking that's an option, for them to figure out, depending on what the plaques cost each year.
Yeah.
To move along, so, but I'm happy to look at other options with the minutes.
Yeah, and I agree with what Steve said, that it feels hard to see a substantial increase, to Historic District Commission while, we're seeing hesitation about whether public safety has enough money, right? Like it's hard to put those two things together.
Yep.
But maybe we can be a little bit creative and still meet the needs of the Historic District Commission while they continue to serve the town, because I understand that's the end goal too.
Yes, and you guys, the council brought me on to put an end to the ADA discussions on the grade. This would be a working part of that solution.
Yep, I got it. I hear what you're saying. I hear it. And I just have one more like overall thing. I did send you an email, but I wanted to state publicly that I would like to see options for a town-wide increase of 3%. And what is the impact to the town budget and to the services we provide if the town does, if we as a council decide not to pass on a 5.11% increase, but only a 3% increase to the
Okay.
town side. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Murray. Are there any other questions from council members? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:12 p.m.
So moved.
From the Councilman Murray, is there a second? Second by Councilman Yudichak. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. See you Monday for part 3.